Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to an all new year of racing at SimRacing International. That's right, 2026 is with us, and with it being with us of course, it can only mean one thing: it is time for plenty more racing as we get ourselves set for what is a fantastic year ahead, and we open up with a bang with none other than an all new championship here at SimRacing International. Well, it was a dream that we thought of in 2025, but come the very first couple of days of 2026, it's finally here, it is a reality. That's right, we have our all new GTE series which we're getting underway with today, and what a series it's going to be. The Grand Touring Endurance machines, well, they may be of yesteryear, having raced from 1999 through to 2023, but they've been immortalised on the iRacing simulator platform, and we're bringing them back out and fully full to life as our drivers get ready to go racing for what is going to be an absolutely hotly anticipated and contested championship. 10 rounds, around a week, every Friday, and come the end of it all, there'll be champions in drivers' classes and teams champions as well. And for it all, you can enjoy the journey over what is going to be an incredible series of races following the official GT Sprint Series calendar. Indeed, we couldn't ask for a better championship to get our 2026 underway, and here we are today with round 1 of 10 at Daytona International Speedway. A circuit spanning 3.56 miles in length, and a circuit which is visited on an annual basis by many a series, whether it be domestic, national or international. Well, the Florida State Circuit is definitely one of the premier premises of the United States of America, if not the world, and of course it is host to none other than the 24 Hours of Daytona on an annual basis ever since 1966, and nobody can consider their championship campaign complete without a win at Daytona. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight on SimRacing International's YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com and search for SimRacing International, and you can be tuning in there, enjoying the likes of many of you, including Jonky25, also Alex Bolliard 8751. Also, we do say hello there to Kitty's Mad, Phil Presler 7177, Steve 505, and also a couple more of you. Don't be shy, feel free to say hi and let us know how you're doing. Happy New Year to you, ladies and gentlemen, because it is only the second day of 2026, so we can get away with that for at least a few more days, and we're very happy to have you with us. In the commentary booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as the head of Paul Walsh Productions, an all-new production company that's arisen on the Sim Racing Theatre for 2026. That's right, I've gone full-time, ladies and gentlemen, into sim racing broadcasting. I couldn't ask for a better way to kick off my all-new direction in career than with the GTE Championship here at SimRacing International. But enough about me, more about what's going on today as our drivers get all set. They're currently in qualifying, so let's jump into the details and fill you in with everything you need to know as we bring our way into an all-new championship. So, let's start off with the calendar then. As we said, we follow the official GT Sprint Series brought to you on iRacing, so therefore, the weeks of racing are thus. We begin at Daytona, then we head to Virginia International Raceway for round number 2. Then we continue the theme of the US of A for rounds 3 and 4 by making our way to Road America and Road Atlanta. However, on the 16th of January, what you'll find is there we make our way out for a 90-minute race, 9-0, indeed, 1.5 hours compared to our 1-hour races elsewhere on the calendar, because all our races are at least 60 minutes in length, but we wanted to throw a bit more of the endurance variety, and therefore that's why we have a 90-minute race in round number 3, and you'll see it again later in the calendar with round number 8. But to get to Interlagos on the 20th of February, we've got a few venues to go, including none other than the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and that is Mexico for round number 5 on the 30th of January. Then we break our way right into the second half of the season with a visit to Silverstone, followed by Le Mans, and then it's Interlagos in round number 8 for the second of our 2 endurance race rounds. Then we make our way to Italy for Mugello, and we wrap it up on the 6th of March at the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit. What an absolutely bumper-packed calendar it is, no doubt about it. And indeed, these are some of the very best circuits that we have seen racing take place at in the best part of several decades. And indeed, GTE Racing Machinery has been to many of these circuits and not all of them. Or if it hasn't been there, well, we wish it could have been, because it definitely is a class which does well at every single circuit it can be taken to. But for the uninitiated, GTE machines, what are the machines that are available then on the iRacing platform, and what can we expect our drivers to race in? Well, here they are. We have 5 machines which our drivers can race in. Starting from the top left and making their way rightwards and then down. It's the Ford GTE firstly, or the Ford GT we should say, with its wonderful EcoBoost engine there. We then do have to the right of it the BMW M8 GTE, the Goliath of GTE, with its absolutely sonorous 4-litre V8 engine, albeit a naturally aspirated engine there. Then we do have the Porsche 911 RSR, in fact not naturally aspirated I should say for the BMW M8, more on that a little bit later. But then we do have the Porsche 911 RSR start, and that's definitely a flat 6 that will be going screaming down the straights. And then we'll be hearing the Ferrari 488 GTE as well, the Evo edition of it, of course, the very last rendition of the machine. And last but not least, the car that took the last ever 24-hour Le Mans win in 2023 in the GT category, the GT Pro category, is the Chevrolet Corvette C8R. 5 very unique cars, 4 of which mid-engine rear-wheel drive. That's the Ford, the Porsche, the Ferrari and the Corvette. Meanwhile, the BMW is the outlier. Front-engine, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, and therefore there's a little bit of complexity to each and every one of these cars, and we'll be seeing our drivers take to the grid in these machines week in, week out. And we'll talk a little bit more about the machines later on in the broadcast day and indeed over the entirety of the season. Now, in terms of our drivers, because of course we've got 5 cars, but we're going to need some drivers to drive them, surely. Well, we've got 60 drivers, that's a big 60 registered to be on the grid for this season, and they're going to be split into 3 classes over the course of the championship campaign. We begin with the elite class drivers, of which there are 25, and at the very top of them all, well, arguably is a driver who needs no introduction in the real world of racing. It is none other than Mirko Bortolotti, the Gazex Racing Team driver. And well, if you haven't heard of him, he's definitely a fun sim racer, but also he's an incredibly accomplished real-life racer. Having been born in January 1990 and he's 35 years of age, well, he's definitely put down some huge markers, including most recently, of course, winning the Spa 24 Hours with Lamborghini, and well, before that, racing in none other the Iron Lynx machinery for several years, also competing in the 2022 Deutsche Tourwagen Masters, or DTM, with the GRT Grosser Racing Team, but he's also been on the grid for the Blancpain GT series in both the endurance and overall championships in 2017, also the Eurocup Megane Trophy all the way back in 2013, and also he did win all the way back in 2008, what really first put him on the map, the Italian Formula 3 Championship. So Mirko is definitely no slouch when it comes to racing, whether it be in real life or simulation, but it's not just about him, to be fair, and we've got plenty of big names when it comes to the GT drivers. Indeed, this could arguably be a GT who's who, including Olivier Dean for Cube Racing Team, and you'll see plenty of the French outfit on the grid. We also do have Jack Wells for Beast Racing, Martin Statman for Gazex Racing Team, Callan Lux for Jens Brothers Competition. And 5 big names there in their own right, and that's not just because they've got the highest I ratings of all the drivers here, but also looking to the other right-hand side there, we've also got some big names on the SimRacing International side, including Pedro Luis da Silva back once again for GPX SimSport. We also do have the very accomplished sim racing photographer for Ryan Walker Sim Racing Photography, but he'll be racing under the guise for Altitude 3 of Esports. It's Ryan Walker I'm speaking about there, the Scotsman. He will have his teammate Mark Hutchinson alongside him, and we also do have there Seren Kroll for Beast Racing, Miguel Leon for Enosis Esports, the team that, of course, dominated proceedings in the 2025 SimRacing International America's GT Challenge Championship. And well, the Spanish team back once again with different drivers on the grid this season, and we look forward to seeing what Miguel can get up to. And we also do have Justin Noel there from the US of A taking to the grid. And a big, big welcome to all of our elite class drivers, all 25 of them who'll be going for the ultimate prize of Elite Drivers Champion, the best of the best. In the Pro class, meanwhile, our second of our 3 classes, we have 16 drivers on the grid, including firstly none other than Angel Ordonez and the Moon Racing Team driver. He'll be looking to surprise everybody when he does go racing, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to do. We also do have there Jan Lintz for Gazex Racing Team and Cedric Boysier for Cube Racing Team, and Boysier, one of the superstars of the GT Official Series. I can tell you that, having covered his racing for several months. He's a very quick driver out there, and he's definitely going to be one of the favourites of the Pro class. But we also do have some new names on the grid, including Mellow Motorsports' Dominic Singundonk, and I do believe his brother is competing in what is the Interclass, which we'll come to shortly. We also do have one of the series organisers there, Made for Racing's Jack Barker, back on the grid once again. I'm very happy to hear that he's been getting behind the scenes when he's normally been a sim racer, but now he's getting behind the scenes and helping make things happen. And we also do have Noah Blackwell there, looking to the top right table for Axis SimSport, and also we do have the Inox Motorsport pair, Matthias Pettinger, and also, in fact, Penninter, I should say, and also Benjamin Massey, who'll be teaming up together and looking to go for gold. And let's not forget Don Hunter, the lowest I-rating driver of the Pro class in 2096, but that doesn't mean he's going to be the slowest. Now, as for your Inter drivers, meanwhile, 19 of them, here they all are. They're your lowest pace drivers, as considered by the driver class. That's why we have the 3 grades of Elite, Pro, and Inter, but you do have some big names on here as well, albeit perhaps they don't captivate the stars in terms of pace, but they definitely captivate the stars with their creditable racing, including Eddie Theobald there, the privateer, ahead of fellow privateers Flavian Terfi, and also Lewis Johnson. We also do have Sim Party Racing's Logan Timberlake, I do believe a late joiner to the series, and he was one of the very last drivers to get on the grid before we completed all of our sign-ups, of which we did have 60 sign-ups, and we've got some reserves on the grid. But we also do have John Lebret and Andrew Fellers there for GPX SimSport. They make their way back onto the grid once again. You can't turn them away at SimRacing International. They've been in every series over the last couple of years. We do also have there Chris Susky for China Shot Racing. He definitely loves his GTEs, and we look forward to seeing what he can do. But don't forget Verano Academy's Craig Tillotson as well. And I can tell you one thing, I do believe Katie Eames there in at the YouTube chat will be absolutely cheering him on every step of the way. We also do have there Brian Beardsworth and Virgilio Garcia, the two privateers, and we have the Worm Trap racing pair of Samuel Nuccia and Riley Green. And let's not forget Hilke Zylstra, who's definitely surprised many a driver with some very considerate and consistent racing experiences over the last couple of years for Sim Party Racing. So 60 drivers then, we've introduced them all. What are they competing for? Well, they're competing for 35 personalised driver trophies. They are going to be the top 8 in the elite class. They will be receiving trophies. That's your top 8 in the championship come the end of the season. In the pro, your top 6 will be eligible, and in Inter, your top 6 will be eligible as well. And that's been forecasted based on the number of sign-ups in each class. That's where you have a couple more in the elite class compared to pro or an Inter, but these trophies are a personal possession which our drivers will be taken away at the end of the season, and they can have it on their mantelpiece to remind them where they were when they competed for glory in the first ever GTE Championship hosted by SimRacing International. And indeed, it's a little bit of pride, more so than money, let's say. And indeed, right now I can tell you one thing, having one of these trophies looking down on you from your mantelpiece is definitely a fond memory to have in mind. We also do have the Teams Championship, and all drivers in the top 5 teams will be taking home personalised drivers' trophies as well. So if our drivers can't quite take the driver's crown, they can always compete for teams' honours, and there's something to play for everybody here when they do go racing. Now, in terms of going racing, here's the boring part. We do have to talk a little bit about the rules. We're not going to linger on these for too long, understandably. We do have 2 types of round. A 60-minute round, which you'll see tonight, and we also have our 90-minute race rounds, which you'll see in rounds what is 3 and 8. The point being, our drivers will have an open practice session. We're not televising that. They've also got a qualifying session for 45 minutes. We'll be capturing the last 15 minutes of that in approximately 3 minutes time to see how they're all going to line up on the grid. Then we're going to have a small comfort break for our drivers to get their setups on their cars, their race setups that is. Nobody wants to have the wrong fuel in the car, and also a little bit of a comfort break should they need it. And then we will have our 1-hour race tonight, which is worth standard points. But when we do have our 90-minute races, they'll be worth 1.5 times the points because they are 1.5 times longer. Now, you don't need to know about what cars they can select because we talked about that earlier on. They also have a drop score over the course of the season. They have one faster who are available in each race should they need it, and it is a completely open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 80% for the purposes of the races. Instant points, if they get 18 or more, they'll receive a drive-through penalty. Get to 26, they will be disqualified, but hopefully we won't be seeing that. But that's the rules and regulations. We have to tell you a little bit about those, otherwise we can't go racing. I hope our drivers are also read up on them because otherwise they'll be in trouble. But as for our circuit for tonight then, it is none other than the Daytona International Speedway's road course. 3.56 miles in length or 5.72 kilometres depending on your preference of units, but either way what doesn't change is the location of this circuit, located near Daytona Beach in Volusia County of the US state of Florida. This is one of a very rare kind of circuits whereby it's a roval essentially, but it brings together over 80% of the oval and also an incredibly tricky infield section which requires our drivers to negotiate quite a quick sequence of corners, starting off with an S's sequence that turns 2 and 3, and then 2 hairpins back-to-back, a horseshoe hairpin at turn number 4, and a much tighter hairpin at turn number 6, with fast left-hander at turn number 5 also for company. And therefore for our drivers, it's going to be a big question here over the 12 quarters. Are you going to go for outright pace, knowing that's going to cost you a lot of fuel on the oval banking, or do you sit in the slipstream and try to fuel save as much as possible and not gain places until the very end? But indeed, it's going to be a game of high-speed strategy, and you've also got the bus stop chicane at turns 9, 10, 11 to contend with, which has recently been refurbished both in real life and also on iRacing to accommodate the change in the curbing for NASCAR racing. And definitely that's going to be of intrigue to our drivers, and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for the brilliant simulator on which we host this series, but also the wonderful track maps which we can use to bring this all to life. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's make our way to circuit side, and as we do, all our drivers right now gunning their way around, and we are in the throes of the qualifying session. Now with 16.5 minutes to go here, all drivers are out there setting their best possible times at the moment. We do owe you a brief apology with regards to the fact that the timing tower right now is only showing drivers overall. It's not showing them in their respective classes. We do seem to have a slight technical issue, which we are working on in the background, a bit of an unexpected one, but at the very least, given the fact the driver classes can fluctuate for the first couple rounds, our drivers drivers will have their classes confirmed to them after the first 2 rounds. It does mean right now you could see this round, and indeed round number 2, as more of a question of who's going to be your overall winners rather than who's going to be your class winners. And it's from round number 3 where that becomes even more telling. But right now it looks Mirko Bortolotti is currently the fastest of our drivers out there on a 40.896, whereas Callum Lux, meanwhile, well, he's the second fastest out there, a 10th behind. And we're looking at him right now as he scoots his way through Horseshoe Hairpin and elbows away on past one of our Porsche 911 RSR drivers. Now we do say hello to a few more of you in the YouTube chat. Goodness me, you've all been piling in on here, and it's so great to see, including none other there than Jason Ashfield, who's cheering on Craig Tillison. And good evening to you, Jason. I hope you're doing well. We also say hello there to a pack. I believe I'm going to probably get this completely wrong in terms of how I say it, and I do apologise in advance, good sir or madam, depending on your gender. And that is none other than Paco Elchino 8832, and Happy New Year to you. We also do say hello there to none other than Kirby, and well, I hope you're doing well, good sir. Also, we say hello there to I think I've said hello to Alex Boyliot already, but I'm going to say hello to him once again. We also do say hello there to David Brown, and I believe we also say hello to Thomas Pugh, who's cheering on both Noah and Chris. And also, as we say hello to the time consumer there, and that's none other than Mark Kent, who is a driver of many a sim racing fame, particularly in the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Series that I do cover, and also we have seen him in GT3 racing. I'm not quite sure he's made his way into a SimRacing International Series as of yet. Mark, I'm not trying to encourage you to join the grid of a SimRacing International Series. I'm asking you politely, please do so, because we'd love to see you out there in the near future. But as all drivers make the way around right now, we do see Benjamin Massey here currently scooting his way on through and up onto the bank in here. And as he does so, well, he's got a long line of cars in front of him, and this is an open qualifying session as well. So what you're probably thinking right now is, what does this mean for our drivers? Well, simply put, what it does mean is that all the drivers here have the opportunity to try and put together a good lap in the space of 45 minutes, and they also have the opportunity to try and find a bit of slipstream to tow off the back of, particularly when you have a teammate. Benjamin Massey here definitely finding his teammate as the pro driver makes his way around, and thanks to the wonderful power of the organisers, particularly we have to give a big shout out to Jack Barker, even though we can't tell you the class of the drivers right now on our timing tower due to a slight glitch, which we're trying to fix in the background, and you may see the overlay every so often refresh itself. What we can definitely tell you is that on the side of the cars you will have specific colour decals on the cars, or door cards, and you'll see who's in which class. Our red drivers, in terms of the red backgrounds on their door numbers, they are your elites. Those with green are pros, and those with blue, you guessed it, are the inters. No, they're not the tyres, they are your third class out there as everybody makes the way around. But as we do say hello there to Blaze LK59, who says that they've ended their qualifying session early due to being impeded, and therefore they've decided to invest their energies into essentially getting ready to go race. And that's not a bad call, to be fair. Sorry to hear it's not quite worked out for you, good sir, but still, things can always work out in the race. And that's the one thing about Daytona, of course, is that this is one of those circuits whereby you do have to play a lot of patience rather than be outright aggressive. As we do see, the man I was only praising moments ago, Jack Barker, out there right now in the wonderful Ford GT. Now, for those of you who are sat there right now wanting a little bit of a quick history lesson on the GTE machine, perhaps you're not quite used to the Grand Touring Endurance machine, well, we said in the intro to this broadcast that they were raced from 1999 through to 2023. They didn't start off, however, as GT machines. They were originally listed as the GT class in the 24 Hour of Le Mans in 1999, plus also they raced in the American Le Mans Series and the European Le Mans Series of that year, and they also debuted as the NGT class in the FIA GT Championship. Wind your way forward the best part of 20 or so years, 24 years to be precise, they concluded their career in both the World Endurance Championship in 2023 and also in the IMSA SportsCar Championship in the year before, if I do believe, of 2022, and that's when they gave way in IMSA to the GTD class, which would later be known more commonly as the GT3 class, and subsequently we have seen the replacement of the GTEs in World Endurance Championship, or WEC, with the LM GT3 class, or you could refer to them as GT3. Now, these cars, they did have quite strict regulations when they were introduced, and those regulations never quite went away. In terms of the machines, they had to be based on available road cars at the time, which featured at least 2 doors and 2 seats, alternatively 2x2 seating configurations, and the engines in these cars had to be modified variants of the production engines available to the machine. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean you can quite take the engine you've got in the Porsche 911 RSR here, the flat 6 4-litre engine, and essentially put it into a Porsche 911 on the road. It's quite the opposite way around. It was a modified version of the engine available in the road-going Porsche 911 at the time. And you're going to find that with plenty of these cars, whereby they are going to have will essentially be those road engines. The BMWs as well are another great example of that, whereby essentially with regards to the BMWs, the engine in them is also the engine that you would have found in the contemporary BMW M5 road car, as we do see Robin Noel Brown there deciding to park up after leaving the pit lane, perhaps wondering whether there's an issue with the car, and well, we see Anthony Hilton making his way on around. But as he does in his own BMW, we also do have some rather specialist cars out there, such as the Ford GT, of which we do see Riley Green, currently with no lap to his name, out of our 58 drivers here. My good look, 58 drivers in the season open, that's absolutely incredible. I've got to take a pause there and a bit on the side. Out of our 60 entrants, about only 2 couldn't make it today. That is absolutely incredible. But the Ford GT, you may be asking, well, this was a road car, but surely it didn't sell in that many numbers. Well, you would be correct in the fact that you can't just walk into your local Ford, or at the time you couldn't just walk into your local Ford dealership and say, I'd like a Ford GT, please. They would say to you, okay, how deep are your pockets? And I can't remember exactly how much they retailed for on their debut, but let's say it was in the best part of, we're talking hundreds of thousands, if not millions of pounds. However, the regulations were gradually modified and waivers were introduced over the course of the series history, whereby cars that were produced in smaller numbers were eligible for entry, but they were very tightly controlled, just as much as the road cars were, if not more. They had to be a road car. You had to be able to see this car on the road, as we do see one of our Ford GTs opting to show itself off the road there. Couldn't quite see how that was, but that was one of our Cube Controls Reparto course machines, and I do believe, well, that was not Julian Eichenlaub, I'm not quite sure who it was. Was it Cedric Boyce there making a bit of a ham sandwich? Yes, it was, because there's Boyce getting it wrong, coming out of what is turn number 7. Boyce going all the way round, and I suspect right now a little bit of frustration when we get into the Frenchman, but he'll get himself back together shortly. So, with that in mind and a little bit of history about the Ford GT, all these cars then had to be road cars turned race cars with some aerodynamic refinements. They had to have a minimum weight of 1,245 kilograms, or if you're looking for pounds, that was 2,745 pounds, and that included the driver and fuel, subject to any balance of performance modifications. And of course, the balance of performance in weight added to or removed from the cars in some instances. As for the engines, and this is quite an interesting part of it, it was an actually aspirated engine, such as what you're seeing here with the Corvette C8 RGTE. Well, they were allowed to go up to 5.5 litres of displacement. Well, we include the Corvette and the Porsche in particular in that. Whereas if it was forced induction, so looking more towards the BMWs and the Ferraris, and also I do believe the Ford GT, they were only allowed up to 4 litres by comparison, and therefore it did mean there were restrictions on these engines. But when you consider that these engines with balance of performance were pushing upwards of the best part of 550 to 600 horsepower, and the amount of aero that's on these cars, you could imagine that these cars, compared to the modern day GT3 at most circuits, were on average around 2 to 4 seconds a lap faster, given the fact the top end speed to these cars are absolutely monstrous. They lack a little bit of corner speed, but one of the reasons for that is not because they have problems in the corners, it's because they have no anti-lock braking system. Traction control systems were allowed in these cars, so TCS is on. ABS, or anti-lock braking, is off. It's not permitted. Our drivers will have to do all the anti-lock braking themselves. There'll have to be the modulations, and if they can't modulate it correctly, then they may find themselves very quickly locking up and going straight on, typically to the grass and hopefully not to a wall. And that's what makes these GT cars quite challenging, is in the fact that you do need to manage your brakes very carefully, because if you don't, you go too heavy on the brake pedal, particularly early on, you can flat spot the tyres, overheat them, and then you completely ruin the tyres, so what could be the best part of a 90-minute stint. So that's a quick summary of the GT class. And if you're wondering where the car ended up in terms of its final appearances, well, it was the 2023 8 Hours of Bahrain in the World Endurance Championship. And, well, the team that we all love to see do well, unfortunately, we're not going to be seeing it on the grid in the World Endurance Championship next year, or I say next year, this year, but in the upcoming season. It was the Iron Dames team, the all-female racing team, who took victory at the 8 Hours of Bahrain in the GTE AM class in the final outing for the GT machines. And whilst these machines have been retired, they have been immortalised on iRacing. Albeit there's one car that we would definitely love to see on iRacing, that would be the Aston Martin V8 Vantage that raced all the way up to the end of 2023, if my memory serves me correctly. Unfortunately, that's the only one of the modern era GTs not available in the simulator service. I don't know why, don't ask me, but I can definitely tell you we'd love to see it there. We've got 5 out of the 6 big greats there, so we can't complain too much. That's a bit about the GTE machines, in case you're curious. And as we come down to the final throws of this qualifying session, with only 6.5 minutes left to go and an unlimited number of laps for our drivers to put in, as long as they get the job done, It does look as though right now, everybody right now continuing to try and push for that pole time, but Mirko Bertolotti is definitely the driver right now to beat in the Corvette C8R, and well, he's out there right now looking very quick indeed, as Callum Lux is a lot further back on the circuit. However, he is very close to the time, and Tim Perry, one of our big names of course, from what was the America's GT Challenge Championship, which was our multi-class GT3 and GTE series, well right now Perry definitely pushing hard to try and see what he can do when all is said and done at the end of this qualifying session. But as all drivers are all the way around right now, there's still a bit of time out there. Could we see some late surprises? That is what we're wondering. And we do see that, and a big thank you to Time Consumer in the YouTube chat for saying, well, firstly, that he's on the grid for the Thursday GT3 League that we're going to be kicking off as of next week, with our pre-season events having concluded as of New Year's Day. Albeit we didn't have too many drivers on the grid there. Those who were able to put a lap together, well, congratulations to them. I definitely wasn't able to put a lap together, let alone a commentary line together yesterday, albeit that's because I had a very late night. But enough about me and my drinking habits, more about what our drivers are doing out there. And we do see Hennig Schwebig right now making his way around in a very yellow and black BMW M8. And well, definitely, I've never referred to a BMW M8 as what is a bumblebee, but I definitely think right now that he'll feel more like a Hornet with the sting he might be able to deliver in the racing. But that's going to sting when he had to back off there coming into what was the chicane. But he makes his way on around. Time Consumer also giving us the heads up there that the cost of the Ford GT when it was released on the road in 2016 was $475,000, or in Great British pounds at the time, not adjusting for inflation, £250,000. Well, my good lord, unfortunately, I don't quite have that. I don't think any of us have it, but if we all pull together, we might be able to buy a tyre off one. But as Thomas Pugh says, I'll take 3, please. Well, I definitely know what we can take, ladies and gentlemen, and that is an on-board lap. And as we do see Adrian Vlock making his way slowly down the gears, we're going to make our way over instead to Christian Ablasser, who is going to take us around for a flying lap here of the Daytona road course circuit. Albeit, I don't think he is, in fact, because he is calming the car down. And as he does so, I think that might be the story of many a driver here who right now just getting themselves set up for one last attack of the circuit. Or perhaps he's trying to look for a teammate to work with. We'll have to wait and see. Can we get on board like one of our drivers? And it always seems to be one of these challenges right towards the end of the qualifying session, as we see Chris Round make his way up to the timeline. I think he is going to go for an attack lap. And so down to turn 1 he comes in, braking all the way down and finding a bit of traffic there as he falls to second gear through the opening left-hander. And now flat out he'll come in towards turns 2, 3 and then up towards 4 as he's having to negotiate cars that step in wide, and up into the braking zone he comes then for the horseshoe hairpin. All the way down to first gear here. It's about patience, get the car pointed and then bury the throttle as he now accelerates his way up to turn number 6. He's got a fast left-hander to deal with here, and he's going to bring the car to the right-hand side and chuck it in full throttle in 4th gear, upshifts to 5th on exit, and now hard onto the brakes here, as gently as he can be. Down to 2nd. Will he drop to 1st? Yes, he will, as he makes his way out to the right-hander and now up towards turn number 7. Coming towards the end of the infield section, it's all about getting this corner absolutely spot on for exit. Braking hard, drops to 2nd gear, nice tight approach, and lets the car roll out very wide there. Carries a lot of speed on exit. It's one of the 2 lines you can take there at turn number 7, to be fair, but you've got to be bold, have the car set it right, and rounded exactly that, as he now drags his way all the way along the banking. Heading up towards the bus stop chicane, or the Le Mans chicane as it's properly known, and as he makes his way down to the flat, he'll bring the car to the right-hand side here. Already at 180 miles an hour, he looks to his right-hand side with his brake marker, braking down the 100 metre towards the 3rd gear, trailing in, and now full throttle blast all the way out here as he hops his way over the curbs. Does so there. Usually you could take a much more aggressive exit, but not some of the more raised curbs now, and round here building up the speed bit by bit. It's been a lovely lap so far from Chris Round. He's currently 30th overall. What's he going to be able to do here as he heads towards the timing line and, well, pulls out the slipstream there, working with the 229, and well, as he continues his way, that's Matt Broom giving him a big toe. Round comes that timing line then at 180 miles an hour. What's it going to be for Round? It's 28th now, 41.990, a good lap there to give us an idea of what it takes to do a lap at Daytona in the GT machine in that Porsche 911 RSR, and well, Round will be happy with that one, and he'll be hoping to see what else he can do a little bit more as they make the way on through. But As we do see Adam Watson giving his thoughts on the Ford GTE and saying it's not a pure GT car, and he's not quite happy with that, or well, I'd say he hates it with a passion. What the Ford GTE or the GT road car, do let us know, Adam. And indeed, everyone has their preferences. If I had to be honest with my preference, well, I was always a big BMW fan until I got to hear the Corvette C8R in person in 2023 and the final outing for it at Le Mans, and the infamous comeback drive from 2 laps down for the Corvette racing team there. And I'll tell you one thing, hearing this wonderful beast with its V8 engine roar past every lap, well, it's definitely something to be beholden. But all these machines, definitely from an era now where there's been a lot of restrictions put in with regards to exhaust noises, and definitely these cars are some of the loudest that you'll ever hear go racing, not just on the simulator but in real life, but on iRacing. Definitely, we've actually had to turn our camera microphones down quite a bit because of how loud they are when we're riding on board with these cars, because they are incredibly loud machines. And well, as this session comes towards its end right now, we'll wait to see who is going to be bringing any late surprises to the table. As we do look a little bit further down to one of our Inter drivers, it's Bruno Qi, the Chinese driver here, making his way around for Team WP300. And we've got drivers on the grid from all the way around the world racing in this series, from China to Australia, Qi being a fine example. But we also do have, and I believe it's 3 o'clock in the morning in particular for a couple of drivers racing from Australia, including Adrian Vlock here as he makes his way on through. And also, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, we do have Pete Edwards out there. And, well, he's racing to see how far he can improve and to test himself against fellow GTE enthusiasts. Well, how about that? That's definitely one way to spend your Saturday morning. And I can tell you one thing for Pete Edwards, I absolutely love the fact that he's getting up at 3 in the morning to go racing. Hopefully his family are okay with it. I'm sure he cleared it with them. But as the clock strikes 0, that is it for qualifying. In terms of if they're on a lap, they're allowed to finish it. If they've completed the lap, then they are not allowed to do another one. Here's Olivier Dean, who picks up a big slipstream there of one of the fellow Cube Controls machines. He heads towards the line. He was purple there in the final sector. Does he go even higher? Yes, he goes to second. We've got a Ferrari on the front row, joining the Corvette, and Dean right at the end absolutely leaps ahead with Sylvain Depech's teammate line up in 3rd place just behind. So therefore it's Corvette on pole in the form of Mirko Bortolotti, and then we do have Olivier Dean and Sylvain Depech and Callum Lux as your top 4, with 2 Corvettes on the first 2 rows and a Ferrari and a Porsche to mix things up. Well, how about that, ladies and gentlemen? And well, as our drivers make the way around on their final flying laps, well, it's going to now be what will be a couple more cars to get themselves into position here, and Jack Wells being one of them on a cool down lap by looks of things here. He's taking it nice and easy. We've got Matt Broom heading towards the timing line, and as he does so in that number 29 right now, well, in fact the 229, who is 29th place. Goodness me, how about poetry on that? And he makes his way towards the timeline. What's it going to be this time? Something tells me if it's going to be an improvement, we will see, although I think the timing glitch there on our qualifying timer may indicate that was more of a warm-up lap. So therefore, I think he's just doing some sighting work as Robin Noel Brown cools things down. And I think that's it for qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. And it is Mirko Bortolotti who takes pole position for the season opener. But the elite driver will be joined on the front row by fellow elite driver in the Ferrari by only 44 thousandths. It's Olivier Dean, and then it'll be Sylvain Depech and Callum Lux behind, with Tim Perry, Miguel Leon, Martin Statman, Angel Ordonez, and then we do have none other than Henning Schwebig and Rene Rissler who complete your top 10 as everybody cools on down now. Indeed, they've got a bit of time before they do go racing, and that's absolutely perfect. A 5-minute breather, and it gives us a 5-minute breather to potentially see if we can fix those classes that we've definitely mentioned before, because we'd love to see how all our classes stack up, but it does seem as though we have a pesky technical issue just chiseling away at the way we want to do things. But we'll look to the scenic view. Things fall silent here at the Daytona International Speedway for a brief moment, and we will be back for plenty more in due course, ladies and gentlemen, as we do just enter into what is the brief break of 5 minutes, and then we'll see all drivers out on circuit once again heading to the grid. And with a 5-minute breather, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to leave you with the sound of GTE machinery getting itself set up to go racing, but we'll be back in 5 minutes. We're just going to work on that slight technical issue in the background. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the pesky issue that's been plaguing us has not gone away. However, what isn't going away anytime soon is some absolutely brilliant GTE class racing. So without further ado, it's time to head to the grid for our opening 60 minutes of racing here at Daytona. So as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they line up for our season opener. It is Mirko Bortolotti who has taken pole position for the Gazx racing team. He'll be joined on the front row of the grid by none other than what is Olivia Dean. On row number 2, it's Sylvain Depeche and Callum Lux, with Tim Perry starting in 5th place ahead of Miguel Leon. Then we do have behind the Palestinian driver none other than the Austrian of what is Martin Statman, and he'll be in the company of the fellow Spaniard of Angel Ordonez. Then we have round off your top 10 Henning Schwerberg and Rene Ressler. Outside the top 10, let's not forget about them. We then have Pete Edwards starting 11th, the Australian driver in the company of the Dutchman of none other than Joris Wiem. Then we do have Marinko Jolonovski starting in 13th place ahead of Pedro Luis da Silva. Then it's going to be Markel Holmes and Dominic Singendonk ahead of Adrian Vlock and Mark Hutchinson. Then we have Albert Perish and Don Hunter completing your top 20. Outside your top 20, in 21st place, it'll be Matthias Pentinger ahead of Christian Ablasser. And then we do have on row 12, Benjamin Massey and Cedric Boissier, with Flavian Teffrey and Jack Wells on row 13. Row 14, it's Soren Kroll and Chris Round with Matt Broom and Liam Kelso completing your top 30. And outside the top 30, we then have Chad Henson, followed by none other than Andrew Fellows. Robin Noel Brown and Pinta Levente, they make up row number 17 ahead of Jan Lintz and Brandon White. Julian Eichenlaub and Justin Noel line up on row number 19 ahead of Marcus Singendonk and John Ludbrook. And that is your top 40. Outside the top 40, it's then going to be Logan Timberlake, and I believe we're going to also have there what will be Jack Barker just behind, with Callum Jenkins and Noah Blackwell on row number 22. We then do have Chris Susky and Anthony Hilton ahead of Bruno Key and Jack Jaeger, with then James Bostock and Jack Jaeger in fact completing your top 50. And outside the top 50, completing that starting order. Firstly, we do have none other than Brian Beardsworth and Eddie Theobald. And then we will have, well, between them is also Craig Tillerson. And then Theobald being joined on that row by Chris Keenan. And then we do have Samuel Nuccia. And I do believe alongside him, I think that's Virgilio Garcia. And then we do have none other than Riley Green and Hilke Zylstra completing your 48-car starting grid. So plenty of drivers out there, ladies and gentlemen. We're all almost very much set to go. We're only moments away now from going green flag racing, and it's to Mirko Bortolotti to take us to the green for our open 60 minutes of racing here at Daytona. And it's lights out, away we go as Bortolotti gets us underway. We are green for the first time this season. And Bortolotti gets a good start and he leaves the field behind as they roar the way in towards the opening corner. But as they all queue on view now, this is all going to be that nip and tuck free wide. Their elbows out from one of our BMWs. That is Rene Ressler trying to get a move on Angel Ordonez. That's not going to work as they now make the way through the sweeping S's. A lot of cars bouncing over the curbs there. They can take a knock or two as Mark Hutchinson fighting hard under the twilight. Onto the brakes they go, and Albert Perish there. He's finding himself right in the midst of it all, the IMSA SportsCar driver, but in the end, he's not going to be able to make two places. He'll just make the one as he battles here with the Ford GT of Hutchinson. But he backs off in the end. 9-2 does not go into one into the fast left-hander on cold tyres. Further back, we do have Julian Eichenlaub and Andrew Fellows fight each other side by side. And Eichenlaub right now fighting hard for Jens Brothers competition. Can he get the job done? He may not be able to because, oh my goodness, that's a big incident. The field's going to have to park up there and take evasive action. A few cars with bumps and scrapes, but that's Dominic Singendonk who's been caught up right in the midst of it. But everyone comes back onto the road now, and we'll try and understand exactly what's happened there in due course as they make the way back up to speed. Car off the road as well. That is Chad Henson parking up in the barrier, and I think Henson's been caught up right in the midst of it. We will get a replay of that when we can. But as they roar the way onto the banking after what has been quite a hairy moment at the hairpins, well, it's not been hairy at the very front of the field because Mirko Bortolotti right now breaking away from Olivia Dean, and Dean an absolute ham sandwich or a run there through the bus stop chicane. Callum looks past him, and so does his teammate Sylvain Depeche. So your top four suddenly changes. We lead the staying the same, but second, third and fourth swapping things around, and Tim Perry watching on from behind in fifth for Altitude 3M Esports. There's a long way to go in this race, and indeed right now it's only one lap of many that's going to be accrued here. And keep in mind with the 80% fuel tank, many are wondering, is there going to be a pit stop required? My gut instinct says there's going to be a lot of fuel saving, or yes, you are going to need to come into the pits here. But as Jack Barker brings himself on through here, he's out of the slipstream. He's going to lose places very gradually here to several drivers, including Anthony Hilton, who goes low. I think Barker here just taking his time and tucking back into the toe here, respecting the fact he's got to work with the drivers around him rather than fight too hard. But as they make the way across that timeline, we've got several cars into the pits, including Kelso, also Timberlake, Noel and Tillotson. They've all been caught up, and there's a big queue queuing up here behind Barker with Jaeger, Bostock and then Keenan together. Oh, somebody's into the barrier. That's Jaeger into the barrier. Was he assisted on his adventure? I'm not sure, but the pro driver definitely finding haste to the barrier and now gets himself back together. But as he does so, what about Chris Susky? Well, Susky here making his way around the China Shop Racing Machine, sponsored by Gameless Ups. And right now as he roars his way out to turn number 4, well, he's had to give way to Eichenlaub there as the 2 Ford GTs exchange places. but there's still more to come, most certainly, as we do have a few drivers in the pits. In fact, we do have the best part of 9 cars in the pit lane as I look at my contact with window, and a replay of what exactly happened is coming up in due course to explain exactly how it all went wrong and for whom we could say the finger might be pointed at, although we're not going to blame anybody, that's for the stewards to do. But meanwhile, looking back inside the top 20, here is Markel Holmes, who right now in the Porsche 911 is having to deal with a rather aggressive there, Adrian Vlock, although Vlock, I think, trying to send a message here, which is he wants to get on through as we look back from the rear of your 212. Now, be on the way along here. Vlock's going to go high immediately. He is not wasting any time. And we briefly lose Markel Holmes, and he re-materialises from the proverbial ether. Hopefully that's not a sign of an issue that's coming to the car later on in the race, because the last thing we want to see is the car disconnect. That's the equivalent of what is an engine blowout in motorsport. But 3 wide we go, and going high is none other than Pentinger, as we do see the iNox Motorsport driver trying to go for the 2-for-1 special here. He's feeling as though he's got the New Year's sales, but can he get it done? The answer is no, he can only get one, because Vlock does make the move there versus Holmes, and Pentinger does also find his way on through. But good work there from the 127 trying to negotiate that, and Holmes now tucks back in behind as they roar the way around, but the elite driver falls behind. Well, he's another elite driver there of Vlock, and also the pro of Pettinger. Heading upwards towards turns 5 and 6 they go, and as they do, all these drivers right now starting to settle into some form of rhyme and reason. However, Mirko Bortolotti right now still leading. Don't worry, that was a slight glitch on the time towel there with regards to Jack Yeager taking the lead. It's because he's just come back out on the lap from the pit lane. Happens very often here at Daytona and certain circuits. But as they all roar and romp their way around, right now, Mirko Bortolotti definitely trying to break Callum Looks in the toe, or at least bring him along and leave Sylvain Depeche behind. But we're going to leave them behind and take a look back in time at what exactly happened on the opening lap. Now this is none other than Dominic Singendonk at the time, made his way into the horseshoe hairpin. He was one of the first drivers to get caught up here, under braking, turned in a tiny tap there from the Porsche alongside, and in the end, multiple cars started to go deep. And at that point, Singendonk, after being collected by the Corvette and subsequently the Ford GT that got caught up in the queue, I think at that point he decided to try and pull the car through, and that's what led to further damage for several drivers. This was the onboard with Jack Wells for Beast Racing at the time. What happened to him? So he was the driver as he came into the braking zone. Well, he's going to find his way all the way around the outside, and Sonny's not, because he's going to find a Corvette that Sonny shunted into Singendonk's car. That was Soren Kroll, and Jack Wells read the third party in that, and then everyone made the way through. And for Wells, collected slightly more there. I can't also miss the front bumper and a bit of a check up there. Not the way anybody wanted it to go. And this was from further back. This was John Ludbrook's perspective as he made his way in. Under braking, he looked around the outside, and the GPX SimSport driver in the end had to take the rallycross line here to survive the second of the hairpins, and it wasn't quite over there because there was a Ford GT spun off the road, but then they all just about made it through, minus the 9 who picked up the big damage. So well done to everyone for negotiating that, but definitely a bit of a moment there where I think many will learn from it going into the next round. But speaking of things that have happened, we had this for Jack Yeager only moments later on lap number 3. Made his way down to turn number 1. Is this going to be a lock-up? Yes, well, it would have been, but he had to dive to the inside in to avoid the lock-up, but collected there by none other than, I believe, the Porsche of Eddie Theobald, who turned in not expecting the Ferrari to dive to the inside. You could see why Yeager did it, because I think he'd missed his braking zone and thought, right, I can squeeze on through, but the reality was very different as we return to your live racing. So back to the racing we come then, and still more. We've had an incident for Callum Jenkins, which we pointed out. He's had to make his way back to the pit lane. It's been a bit of a difficult start to the race for some, and Callum Jenkins, no stranger to going racing. If my memory serves me correctly, I believe he has raced in Porsche Carrera Cup Great Britain, the real-life variant of it. I know there's also a SimRacing variant of it, but he has been on the grid in the Porsche Carrera Cup machine in past years. I think back in 2022, I want to say, although don't quote me on that unless I'm thinking of another Callum, but I swear it's Callum Jenkins. But he's definitely in a Porsche here today, but it's not going his way as I look out my Conte booth window and see him currently being serviced by the team. But meanwhile, on your picture screens right now, you've got Benjamin Massey fighting with Markel Holmes. Massey up the inside there for iNox Motorsport, tucking in behind his teammate of Pentinger. And well, right now the Briton and the Austrian working close together, but Massey going a little bit wide there, I think worried about Nuccia's car that's parked up, and right now it's way, oh my goodness, that's not right at all, and in the end there's a big slide loose, and how on earth they did not collect anybody else, I do not know, but Markel Holmes and Benjamin Massey having a bit of a coming together there, and the Sim Party racing driver no longer having a party, I can tell you that. The party's over right now, he's going to get himself back together, but he's going to have to get a bit of a move on here, here because he has shown a lot of pace, but right now the pace is going backwards every time he tries to go forwards. It's not a happy situation to be in for him, no doubt about it. Further back down the order, Eddie Theobald, who you saw parked up only moments ago. Well, right now, as he tries to make his way forward, he's on the back of Riley Green. And, well, Riley Green has started all the way down in 47th place. Green right now is definitely on a mission to try and move forward. But it's going to be easier said than done for Green, as we can see here, as Theobald looks up the inside as well. 2 wide they enter into turn number 6, and in the end, Green on that outside line. He's going to have the inside in towards 7. 2 wide, they'll continue the story here, and Green fighting hard right now. In the end, he misses his braking zone and goes straight on. Does he avoid the barrier? Yes, he does. That's going to be a quick run to reverse gear there, and the Worm Track Racing driver will now get himself back up to speed. Easy mistake to make on that inside line there, getting stuck into the fight, but in the end, prioritising the fight over his braking zone. We've all been there. But meanwhile, Anthony Hilton, we look up to 33rd, and he makes that move there on Brandon White. And Brandon White, they're getting caught up as we... Oh, goodness me, that's Jack Barker, who's gone in the wrong direction. I don't know how he's managed to achieve that. He was battling there for a brief moment with none other than Brandon White, but I get the feeling he may have taken too much apex curb. Thankfully, here's a quick replay. So this was Barker at the time, getting ready to make a potential move here, grazing the wall, some sparks flying, and as he made his way into the corner, getting caught out there by the slow Porsche in front of him, and I think Barker dropped a gear accidentally, and that made the rear wheel spin up as he was trying to turn through the chicane. And that's not an easy mistake to rectify once it goes round, and for Jack Barker, he now drops back down to 43rd place. But looking up to the head of SimRacing International here, James Bostock for GPX SimSport. He's racing right now, and he does let none other there than Jan Lintz go. And Lintz moves up into 37th place and decides not to fight it as the Inter driver. He lets it go versus the Pro, and onwards he'll move, as Bostock has had a relatively clean start, but still more to come from him as he weaves his way on around the circuit. Now looking further up the order to Mirko Bortolotti. Right now your leader and Callum Lux, they are pulling each other along, or pushing each other along it should be said, and then Olivier Dean has got Sylvain Depech's teammate right behind him. Albeit you are seeing him come behind a little bit of traffic, and that traffic in particular is none other than Virgilio Garcia, who they are using right now as a little bit of slipstream boost. The BMW M8 goes high, and that BMW is a good car to follow because it is one of the fastest in the straight line in the GTE class. Whether it has max downforce or not, it definitely is the quicker of the cars on the straights, but it does struggle in the corners, particularly the braking zones. Meanwhile, the Porsche and the Ferrari on the opposite end of the spectrum, they are the better cars in the braking zones in the corners, none more so than the Porsche, of course, albeit the Porsche also known in the year at one point of having one of the best top end speeds at Le Mans. Right now, as we see the Ferrari and the Porsche drivers working together here for Cuba Racing Team, their goal I think at this point is just to make sure they can stay in the hunt for what is those podium places and see if they can work some strategy to their advantage. But we have a big queue of cars building up here. This is all behind Marinko Jordanowski, the Gazix Racing Team driver from Germany right now in the number 10, trying to hold on with Miguel Leon 3 seconds up the road. It is a long queue of cars here, extending all the way back to Mark Hutchison, as the Altitude 3M eSports driver looks to get involved in the fight. We ride on board the dashboard of the 233. As he makes his way out of the corner there right now, well, for Hutchison, it's all about trying to get back into position as quickly as he can. I think he'll be happy that he's on this pack, but I wonder if he sees himself a little bit further forward in it right now as he makes his way up onto the banking once again. Now, the thing about these machines, of course, we do know that typically, based on the iRacing balance of performance, the Corvette has taken a balance of performance that's favourable to it for the last year and a half or so, much like its BOP when it was retired from the service, as all of these cars. We do know the Corvette is a bit of a beast when it comes to fuel saving and overall car management. The longer the race goes, knowing the Corvette is one of the stronger cars. The Ford GT, meanwhile, much like the BMW and the Ferrari, is a bit weaker over longer race distance, particularly the Ferrari that is very prone to sensitivity in its tyre compound and its brakes. The Ford GT, for all the speed it's got, it has to do a bit of a balancing act, which is you either go all in on speed or you have to go all in on fuel saving. You can't find a middle ground in it necessarily. So right now for Hutchison, he's definitely got a tough task in front of him. Does he just stay behind and fuel save, or does he try to pick up the pace here and start to carve his way through? Even though it's only an hour's race, we are expecting a pit stop, or alternatively, a no stop's going to come about through some very conservative driving. And Hutchison just giving you a demonstration right now of what it's like to run in a pack of 6 cars that are all very close together and having to work out whether to attack or whether just to stay back. But it's going to get a bit frisky here because Pedro Luis da Silva in the Corvette looking around the outside of Rosler. And in the end, it does seem as though the Corvette can't quite go through. But now a fellow Corvette's going to try and make a move here. That's going to be Albert Perish. And the Spaniards in the end has sucked back in behind. For goodness me, they're definitely pushing each other hard as they make their way up towards the next braking zone. And Jordanovski right now, I think will be grateful for the fact he's forcing them all to queue up behind him. But it's definitely getting very close between these drivers, and right now Pedro Luis da Silva's looking around the outside of his BMW counterpart once again. Can't quite find it this time, and the GTE SimSport Onyx driver right now from Portugal, definitely I think at this point it's starting to bear his fangs, so you can see the damage that's being done because it is actually giving Joris Peters Veem an opportunity to open up a bit of a gap in the 11th place to 6 tenths. It doesn't sound like much, but at these speeds 6 tenths is worth its weight in gold. Down that back stretch right now, Luis da Silva looking around the outside. Can he get the move done here? Some say he might be able to. The answer is going to be no. And then Rosler really making that BMW nice and wide. It is the widest of the cars here, funny enough. And it does have the running joker being the Giga BMW, with all the gifts of it being over-enlarged and coming over the hill at Laguna Seca. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just literally search for BMW M8 Laguna Seca meme and you'll find it there. And right now, Rene Rosler living up to the meme there, making that BMW much wider than what the 2.1 metre width of it says. As he makes his way on towards another lap, a little bit further down the order to Dominic Singondong, the man who's right in the thick and right at the epicentre of the open lap instant at turn number 6. But it's not about how you start races, it's about how you finish them. And as he battles with his fellow pro driver there, Benjamin Massey looking to go around the outside, turns on in, but he's going to give some space. And in the end, Massey does back out a little bit. Singondong just creeps ahead. And the Mellow Motorsports driver there fighting nice and hard as they make their way now up towards turn number 4. This is what we love to see. Two drivers getting right stuck into it. And as they make their way out to turn number 4 right now, I think Massey immediately will be switching tact and thinking to himself, right, he's made the move. I don't need to fight him right now. Save it until the end of the lap when I can pick up a potential overspeed. It's so tempting to get straight back into the fight, but when they have got Ablasa, Boisia and Hunter all queuing up behind, understandably, you would imagine that right now it's about moving forward together. Or the saying, as it goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And it definitely does apply here at Daytona more than any other circuit, perhaps. But looking a bit further back as we say hello there to DXT Rob in the YouTube chat, who says keep an eye on Chris Keenan and also James Bostock, old driver who will surely come back soon. Well, here is the MRC driver in the 76 from Belgium, and if James Bostock is only 2 places up the road from him, you just saw him go through the lower portion of the camera. So we could see that rivalry start to come alive in due order as the first 15 minutes of this race are now ticked off. Still plenty more minutes of racing to come, and Chris Keenan right now, well, for all he's worth, he's throwing everything at this, but understandably at this point in time, I think the number 76 driver will be thinking to himself, just get closer and try and get into the toe. He'll get a distant draft here at 1.3 seconds off the back of Tefri's car. However, he will be losing out gradually because Bostock is pulling Tefri away from him up the road. But heading back up the order, we look to Singondonk here, who finds himself back in the fight with Benjamin Massey, as these two now swap places once again, and Mellow Motorsports Porsche falls behind, or does it? Does he go all in on the brakes here? The answer is yes, he does. He's now starting to fight a bit harder. And, well, that's going to go a bit deep there, as Pensinger, meanwhile, has got it wrong for Inox Motorsport. And right now, the 127 driver's causing a bit of a problem here. And Singondonk says, right, you two are both for the same team. I need to get past the pair of you. He goes round the outside there, using the traction of the Porsche. One of its key advantages is its low-speed grip on that rear end, being mid-engine rear-wheel drive, but trying to push the engine as far to the rear of the axle as possible. But Pensinger right now, battling side by side. It's going to be very close under braking, but the Porsche's got the brakes. The Ferrari's got the inside line, but the Austrian goes deep there, and Matthias Pensinger goes so wide that he loses 1, 2, 3 places as quick as that. And suddenly now, Dominic Singondonk moves up the order nice and rapidly there, but he's now going to have Benjamin Massey trying to get very close, and Massey goes deep as well, and understandably, I think the Inox Motorsport team right now are pretty much wanting to glue themselves to the back of this 130 Porsche, but Singondonk has got other ideas. He tries to pull away and get this race on a very good recovery. Drawing his way on through the banking, Christian Ablasa right now is just watching this, I think, and the Gazex Junior team driver's probably thinking to himself, okay, thankfully it's not me, I just need to make sure I don't get caught up in it when it's my turn to try and make a move, because definitely the fighting between these drivers right now is getting quite thick and intense, and understandably here, I think everyone trying to establish where they sit relative to the others. Now we look to Chris around here, the Axis SimSport driver in the 169. And well, he's all over the back of Chris Susky here as these two move forward. Both had difficult starts to their race, and we have had a round come into the pits for repair work. Susky has not gone for repair work as far as we're aware. He hasn't been into the pits as of yet. Definitely both drivers have had difficult starts, but they'll be looking to try and get things back together. And that's why you do have a drop score over the course of the season, because no season is quite perfect. And therefore, it's all about maximising your scores when you can. And, well, for many of these drivers as well, it will be their first opportunity to go real racing in a league environment in the GT beyond the iRacing officials. There's not that many GT leagues out there in the iRacing simulator, and therefore that's why so many drivers wanted to gravitate towards this immediately. But unfortunately, we have had some retirements as a result of the difficulties over the course of distance. And Samuel Nuccia right now is the Worm Track Racing Drivers' last place driver, not just in the team, but also overall in this race. And you do have currently in the pit lane Virgilio Garcia, Ryan Green, and also retired from this race, I do believe, Julian Eichenlaub, Callum Jenkins, and Soren Cole. We have lost 3 drivers so far, and we've got a couple of others in the pit lane being repaired. We still do have 53 runners at least in this race, and we've got a long way still left to go. But as we make our way then a little bit closer towards a third complete, we make our way back to what is none other than the beast racing driver of Henning Schwebing, as right now the 213 driver is still looking to be in control of this run in the BMW. He is currently the second highest placed BMW, the next one being Tim Perry, who's your BMW leader in 5th place. And you can always follow which cars are where in terms of manufacturers in the time down the left hand side of your screen. Right now, you can definitely see the Beast Racing driver here, bringing a lot of drivers along with him, Pete Edwards being one of them. And right now, the HTS Racing driver, well, we'll have to ask him. If we get an opportunity to interview him, I'm going to have to ask him whether he's had any coffee or how many energy drinks he's had. Because goodness me, right now, he definitely is full of energy here for a man who started today at 3 o'clock in the morning in terms of the racing. But right now, as he carries on, well, he'll be heading towards sunrise in Australia, because it is their summer season, of course, out there, whereas it's the winter season in the European continent, such as the way in the northern and the southern hemisphere. Well, as Edwards roars his way through and up towards what we turn number 7. Right now, he's got the company of Miguel Leon behind, and the Enosis eSports driver, well, he'll be thinking to try and just stay with his fellow Corvette and have an opportunity to get involved a bit later in the story. But as they all calm down a bit, and it definitely is now taking a more tactical turn this race, at least what is your top 15. We can see here Joris Petersveen, the privateer, who continues to make sure that the 209 of Albert Perish behind is not able to come through. But Veem right now in the number 2 car, but I can assure you that's part of the livery. His actual door number is 251 for the elite driver. I think he's in a bit of a rock and a hard place situation in that he wants to get his way past Vessler, but he's also cognizant of the fact that he doesn't want to push too hard and be the lead car in this pack, because that will cost him time. But as they get ready to go into the bus stop chicane, one driver who's losing time as a result of it, and it is through a mandated slowdown for track limits, is Callum Lux, the Jens Brothers competition driver, is falling away from the leader of Bortolotti, and right now that gap that was at 1.7 seconds is now going to gradually expand up to the best part of about 2.7 seconds by the time he gets to turn 1. He's trying to bleed that slowdown as much as he can. He doesn't want to lose any time, and he does so as he dances his way into turn number 1, using all the road and plenty more. We call that value-added tarmac. And well, as the German driver gets it together, he does just about make sure not to run too wide, as Olivier Dean meanwhile has now started to break away from his teammate Sylvain Depeche, and Depeche has picked up a slowdown penalty for track limits at turn number 1. He's already burned it through turn number 4, but that puts him on the warpath now with Tim Perry and Martin Stadtmann. And these two have just gradually been working together in the German manufacturing machines, and moving closer to their fellow Porsche, who's running in 4th. But it looks like the top 3 now are starting to pull away from the rest of the field, and they've all got their own gaps as a result. But looking further down the order, here is Ryan Walker for Auto 3M Esports. And right now, the 297 for GTE. He's on a mission to try and find his way past Andrew Fellows and none other than Pinto Levente. But Levente is at the head of this group in the very colourful liveried BMW that you can see off in the distance. Meanwhile, Walker just staying in reach. And looking at this right now, I think happy with how his race has started, given the fact he's gained the best part of 12 places overall. We'd love to tell you how many places gained in class. Unfortunately, we don't have that information, ladies and gentlemen. But right now, the Scotsman doing everything right here to definitely land a good race. And he's always had a reputation in the best part of the 3.5 years years where I've covered his racing, I can tell you one thing, he may not be the fastest driver out there, but Walker has a reputation for being a very consistent and always improving driver. And I remember the days when he was still racing in the lower classes of the UK SimRacing Porsche Cup Series, and how far he's come over the course of 3.5 years. And well, it's no wonder that he's part of the Altitude 3M esports team, so he's definitely in good and competitive company. But heading on down in towards all the bus stop chicane, he falls a bit back from Andrew Fellows there, but that'll all be part of the tactics to make sure he doesn't get too close to the braking zone. And also in turn he can pick up a bit of a distant toe, but carries a lot of speed there, and that's going to really hurt him now as he tries to get himself up to speed on the banking. And in fact that's going to push him a lot further back, so an easy mistake to make, but a very costly one at that, as now he can see his rivals pull off into the distance. But looking to a pair of rivals, here is Markel Holmes and the Sim Party racing driver. Well, the American is under a bit of pressure from Angel Adonis behind him. A bit as they sweep the way through. They want to make sure they don't lose Hunter nor Ludbrook in front. So understandably, I think their full process at this point is going to be just simply don't step on each other's toes and work with the guys in front. It's much easier said than done. But hold up a second, we've had a bit of drama for Anthony Hilton, and here's a replay. So this was the Mellow Motorsports Dutchman as he roared his way in towards turn number 1. His BMW went in blazing hot. Oh, goodness me, that was a bit of a pinch on the front end. The rear of the car becoming unsettled, and then subsequently a slide. And for Anthony Hilton, I suspect, as he towed to the pits immediately there, I wonder whether something has broken with the car, inside the car, because that car was retired immediately. So I think something's gone very wrong for Anthony Hilton. I'm very sorry to see that. I wonder if under braking a braking line has gone, or potentially the actual brake pedal itself has broken in the car, because that's not normal. Now, Hilton would normally just get it back together and recover, but that's a sign of something a bit systemic. From them, it comes back to Holmes versus Ludbrook, and Holmes now looking to try and draft his way on past. And well, in that slipstream, he'll look to go all in into the bus stop chicane. Ludbrook's going to go deep. Adonis makes his way on past as well. So there, Ludbrook find himself losing 2 places for the price of 1. A small lock-up to go with it. Not too pleased about that. We've got Rene Rossler here. Well, you can see here the Gazette Junior team driver. He's still keeping his head down and trying to do everything right. However, the challenge for him at this point in time, of course, will be the fact he still finds himself in the very thick of all the madness, as your theme has gone spinning to the barrier there. And how on earth did he get there when he was towards the very front of this group? That's a surprise and not a welcome one to be certain. As Singledonk right now closes up behind him, the Mellow Motorsports Porsche is going to try and seize on the difficulties of the Dutchman. Looks like the inside, and well, Veem's not going to fight this at all, as we can see that Singledonk completely outbrakes himself into the horseshoe hairpin, but gets it together just about. But a lot of mistakes now being made by drivers. Easy mistakes to make perhaps, but for many this is not the way they wanted it to go. And Joris Veem right now brings himself on down and through turn number 6, but it's not working out for him, as meanwhile Matthias Pettinger and what is their Secret Boys to continue to fight, and they're fighting over 19th and 20th right at the back end of a very long line of cars here. Well, the fight is definitely still going on, and the pack in front is not breaking away, so it's only encouraging them to fight even more. But let's take a look back at what exactly happened to Peters Veem only moments ago. So this was the privateer heading towards turn number 1. He looked to be in the clear, went up the inside there of one of the lap down drivers, and just carried too much speed on the rear axle. Rear let go there as it bounced its way along. We thought he was in the barrier, but not quite. The camera angle was deceiving, so in the end Veem just getting it wrong with his own volition there, and overspeeding into the corner, and the rear coming loose. But as we return to your live pictures, you might be wondering why we've seen that happen from so many drivers. Well, keep in mind, we are at Daytona, and that this is a circuit which encourages minimum downforce. So those large rear wings that you'll be seeing on these GTEs, as we look back to your leader of Bortolotti and also Callum Lux, who's giving chase, once they do have the rear wings, they will have the minimum amount of rear wing angle applied to maximise their top end speed. That means the rears of these cars, even if you are in the front engine rear-wheel drive BMW, the rears of these cars will be sliding around in the heavier braking zones like an absolute monster, and it's taming those monsters whilst also carrying the speed on corner entry that is the challenge, and that is where the real gap in pace comes, because when you're running low downforce you have to drive the kind of very linear fashion in order to get the most out of it. But if you can be a bit more aggressive on corner entry, with the fact you've also got the increase in straight line speed because of the lack of rear wing, you very quickly find yourself on a course to be leading the race. That's why Mark Hutchinson right now continues to stay in the pack, everyone working together, and the Altitude 3M eSports driver there in the very colourful liveried for GTE, making the most of the on-side car lighting as well. And well, I can tell you one thing, whoever designed that livery for Altitude 3M eSports, whether it's a member of their own team, they've done an absolute cracking job there, because that's definitely a contender for livery of the season, of which there is no title for that, but definitely I wonder if there'll be a bit of a driver's vote later on this year. But as they make the way onwards, we're not quite at the halfway point of race distance. We've still got more to come, and well, we've still got a few drivers out there giving it their all right now who we haven't really talked about since the start of today's broadcast, including this man and a highly decorated driver for SimRacing Grid, none other than Liam Kelso in the 159, as we do say hello there to none other than Celtic Racing Scotland, that says good luck to Liam Kelso, the 2025 SMRC's Most Promising Young Driver Award winner and a real-life racing driver in the Scottish C1 Cup. That's the Citroen C1 Cup. Indeed, putting a very good set of performances in 2025. We look forward to plenty more from him in 2026. And I do believe the SMRC is the Scottish Motor Racing Club, unless I'm mistaken. And well, Kelso, they're making a bit of a mistake, and I hope he's not listening right now. My praises for him haven't put him off. They're going through the bus stop chicane. But Kelso, they're having a bit of understeer as he tried to make his way through. And well, had to take the escape road, but with it picks up a slowdown, and he will let Jack Yeager on past him. But as he brings himself back up to speed now, he will serve most of that slowdown, and he'll burn the rest of it in the long run up towards turn number 1. And there it goes, he's killed off the slowdown, and now he's going to try and get back at the Ferrari in front of him as we ride on board. We're at your 159. From the steering wheel on the left-hand side, the micro adjustments he's having to make on corner entry and constantly having to fight the steering wheel against himself. The idea here being, again, what we talked about earlier on, how unstable these cars are. Diego goes very deep there in towards turn number 4, ends up in the grass. Does the Ferrari driver. Thankfully, it doesn't go spinning on around. And right now, the privateer picking it back up. And, well, as he does so, well, that's going to be a place lost after gaining it quite easy. Right now, he brings himself onwards and up towards turn number 6. And as he does so, well, Brian Beardsworth is not too far behind in the Golf livery Porsche. And he has the company of Chris Keenan for close company right there behind him. As these drivers make their way onwards a little bit further, I do wonder, we have had a couple of drivers who seem to have fallen down the order to a degree, including none other than Jack Barker, who after his excursion earlier on, the Made for Racing driver, still trying to get himself together as he chases after Adrian Vlock, but he also does have Justin Noel 8 seconds behind, and here is the privateer right now in the very colourful Corvette, seeing what he can do. But there's a bit of drama. That is a lot of drama. In fact, we've got 2 cars going very slowly. Where is that? 3 cars, in fact. I believe that's heading up towards the pit lane entry. And, well, who exactly is that who's been caught up? As that's Ablasa and Pentinger together. Couldn't quite see the 3rd car that's been involved in all of that. But there's been a big incident, no doubt about it. And I wouldn't be surprised here if we're going to get a replay of this. And we are, in fact. And here it is. So this was 3 wide as they made the way on the oval banking, and in the end, oh no, that's not the way I wanted to go. Almost on his roof there was Ablesa, and Pentinger in the end just went slightly high, and I believe the Axis SimSport Corvette right in the middle there being the additional bit of catalyst for the incident. Can we get the on board from one of them? I think we can. This is from Pettinger's perspective. Making his way onwards. This was the driver at the very bottom, just went slightly high and at that point turned into the barrier, and well, that'll be for the contact with the Axis SimSport machine. A nasty moment there, and I believe it might have been Noah Blackwell who was caught up in all of that. Yes, it was. There was Noah Blackwell. He was a lap down at the time. Not saying it was his fault because he was a lap down. He found himself right in the middle of it all. I mean, trying to mind his own line, and all 3 drivers coming together in the end. A nightmare moment there, and that's going to be a difficult one for the stewards to pick apart, no doubt about it. As Christian Ablasa has taken a pit stop, he's taken the fast repair with it, so he has converted it into his strategy essentially. So that's one of the graces that both he and also Pentinger have had by having that incident so close to the pit lane and almost at the halfway point of the race. But understandably, that I wouldn't be surprised that they're going to be quite frustrated at that, but they've got to get their heads down, get the red mist out of the way, and just focus on what they can do in the here and now today. As that's a big slide loose from Logan Timberlake just back there, and Timberlake going sliding out wide at turn number 7, gets it back together, and Matt Bruin for close company now as they make their way back onto the bank in, while all these drivers are rolling the way on through. and making their way up towards what will be turn number 8, 9 and 10. Well, right now these drivers definitely making some errors as they're getting closer and closer towards the pit stop window, but we've still got some time in this race and we're still waiting to see exactly what is to come next. And as they roar the way around right now, everybody here still keeping it together or thereabouts. And we're just waiting to see what is next in store as Tim Blake on the toe of Matt Broom there. And right now trying to use him essentially to gain a little bit more race time back. But scooping his way on around the outside. And right now for Tim Blake, well, he's going to be looking to bring himself down nice and low there. Gets ahead for Sim Party Racing. And an important move there, I think he would argue, albeit I can imagine, understandably, the other driver around him, Matt Broom, would argue that perhaps they shouldn't be fighting as much as they are right now. Something tells me that Logan Timberlake sees himself moving forward, and very quickly so. Back up to Pete Edwards then for HTS Racing, and right now the Australian driver, he brings himself on around, and he does have still the company of Henning Schwerberg and also Miguel Leon, but Schwerberg looking up the inside here, tries to go for the move in the Beast Racing BMW. Edwards goes a bit deep, fighting with the car there, he goes very deep, and Miguel Leon also comes on through. Can Leon now make it a 2-for-1 special coming in towards Tunnel 4? He's going to go for it, doors wide open. Schwerberg leads the door, but it's contact between the two of them, and Edwards takes back the 2 places that he dearly lost only moments ago. And it's a quick change between the 2 of them. But in the end, Edwards right now moves back ahead. And he'll be very grateful for getting those places back. Albeit Miguel Leon will be a little bit frustrated at the fact that he will feel as though he was turned into. Schwerberg would argue, well, how could the IMSA Esport Corvette have got there without lunging me? 2 very different stories there. But that's why, thankfully, they've still got another 27 minutes of the race to calm themselves down and keep on going. We'll see what's to come next between these drivers as they roar their way around, as there's plenty more distance in this race, no doubt about it, but still plenty of fighting to come. And it's definitely been a race so far of plenty of small stories and forming some considerable rivalries for our season opener. But as our drivers roar the way around, and I do apologise there, ladies and gentlemen, just taking a quick sip of water. Right now, we look to Tim Perry and Martin Statman as these drivers head onwards towards what will be their 21st turn of the circuit. Under race conditions, and you can see Statman there just once again pulling out of the toe for a brief moment just to help sight up his braking zone into turn number 1. As he now makes his way out of the corner in towards turns 2, 3 and 4, the Gazzex Racing Team driver here, I think, eyeing up the idea that he might be able to make the jump with regards to the pit stop later on, if there is one for his race, in the fact that he'll just be able to have saved a bit more fuel by comparison. But as they make their way in towards turn number 6, right now, these 2 drivers, they've only been working together for some time. They've proven the adage, which is that they can work together, but I can imagine the last couple of laps, and it's going to be one of those situations whereby they're suddenly not going to want to collaborate anymore, and instead it's going to be outright fighting. That's what we look forward to seeing between them. But as they roar the way onwards, back to your leader we go. Here is none other than Mirko Bertolotti. And, well, we can see here the Italian driver just running away with this. 5 seconds is the advantage he has over Callum Lux. And Lux right now has, in turn, a 5.5 second advantage over Olivia Dean. So they're equidistant from each other, albeit Sylvain Depeche has gradually caught up to his teammate, albeit that progress is going to be slightly stumped by the intervention of what is a lap down car, or about to be lap down car there, of Hilke Zilstra. But he'll go underneath Zilstra there. Zilstra stays nice and high, and they won't step on each other's toes at any point. Back to Matt Broom versus Logan Timberlake, and well, we thought Timberlake had been able to just break away, and definitely not there, as they now roar their way onto the next sequence of corners. And well, these 2 drivers definitely push each other onwards as much as they possibly can. It's absolutely brilliant to see the fighting between the 2. And I suspect there's going to be plenty more before this is all said and done, as these drivers roar the way around. There is still some more driving to come between these drivers as they make their way towards the next braking zone. Albeit it does seem as though, for at least this moment, they've been able to separate their differences. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of this race we are going to see them coming back together and enjoying a bit more of an exchange. But as that exchange gets ready to take place between them, perhaps a bit later on in the race, no signs of major pit stops from a good number of drivers at the moment. So I think everyone's still trying to go as long as they can. And I wonder whether we might be seeing a few drivers here opt to just simply not take a pit stop until the very last possible moment, out of fear perhaps that they might end up in a position whereby they end up coming out in traffic, and it is going to be traffic that essentially holds them back. Well, we'll have to see what the game plan is, because right now nobody is revealing their hand whatsoever. Everyone does seem to still be moving onwards, but it is definitely proving to be one of those points in the race now, whereby at any moment we might see a little bit of a change up between the drivers. And should we do, we'll definitely bring it all to you as quickly as we possibly can. Back to your leader here there as he passes the pit entry for a 20-second time, about to go into a 23rd lap. 22.5 minutes left on the clock, find a bit more traffic. And we look back to Martin Statman meanwhile. Statman makes his way onwards to the banking as he comes on around. What we can see right now is there's no change here for Statman at all. Well, still with Tim Perry, these two are going to keep working together as much as possible. But where the intrigue is building, of course, is back in the run for 9th through to 13th place. Here is Henning Schwerbeck. And right now, Schwerbeck at the head of a pack that includes René Rosler, also Albert Parrish, Pedro Luis da Silva, and Marinko Jordanowski. As that is going to be there, Schwerbeck going very deep, and that's going to say bring this whole pack back together once again. And well, don't say they don't keep you entertained, ladies and gentlemen, because right now René Rosler moves ahead. Albert Parrish looking up the inside there of Schwerbeck, but that's not going to work for the Spaniard. Indeed, the Inosis Esports driver now has to fall backwards slightly and making the way upwards towards what will be turn number 6. Pedro Luis da Silva watching this eagerly like a hawk in the GPX Sim Sport machine. The Portuguese driving the 255 right now, realising that he can't really make a lunge at this point, and instead he's going to have to just wait a little bit longer. But goodness me, the back and forth here is definitely something that's getting more and more interesting between them all. As there we can see a little bit of look from Parrish once again, as Schwerbeck goes slightly sideways coming out of turn number 7. And I wonder whether the tyres on these cars now starting to feel a little bit of a pinch. Indeed, they've got some journey to go. And remember, when they come into the pits, unlike the GT3s of the present time, these machines, you have to do fuel first and then change the tyres. You cannot do both at the same time. So ideally, when it comes to a pit stop, you don't want to change tyres. You want to, particularly for these shorter 60-minute races, do it on the same set of tyres you started with and just put the fuel in the car. But tyre management is definitely going to be a big question of a lot of the drivers here, because it does seem as though many are starting to struggle on that starting compound. And I wonder if some might opt just to change what is a couple of tyres when they come into the pits. As we do see there, Schwerbeck making his way into the pit lane, so he's decided enough's enough, and the BMW is quite heavy on its tyres compared to some of its rivals, and he's realising with things not going the way he's wanted them to, it's about time he gets himself out of that running order. Well, has he done the right thing or not? He's the only one who can know at the end of it, but we will see what the tale in turn. We can see the Moon Racing Team machine of Angel Adonis meanwhile, where he's definitely under the moon here with the night lights of Daytona. And the 106 driver here right now making his way on around in the Pro Class Corvette, chasing after Markel Holmes. But Holmes is still staying one step ahead of him, at least for now. We'll have to see what's next between these drivers as he roars his way through that right-hander. And the Spaniard definitely, I think, wants to get a bit close to Holmes, knowing he's got the pace to be inside the top 15, but it's not quite come together. Schwerbeck, meanwhile, comes out of the pit lane, and he comes out behind Andrew Fellows, who's yet to pit. And this is the point proven that we're talking about earlier on, which is the reason why many are not pitting, is because they don't want to come out in traffic, and he's come out exactly where he doesn't want to be. Now, we're hoping that Andrew Fellows opts to come into the pits at some point soon, because if he does, that will work out quite nicely, and he'll be able to gain the slipstream for a lap. However, as Fellows makes his way into towards turn number 6, the pit stop is a long way around the lap. And Fellows here right now find himself having to deal with a driver who wants to get his way through, and Schwerbeck makes his way past quite quickly there. And in the end, it does seem as though Schwerbeck just not wasting any time and wanting to make sure he gets to clear track as quickly as he can. A bit further back, one driver we haven't really talked about today for WP300 Esports is Bruno Qi, who right now, the Chinese driver here, doing a great job, having started all the way back in 47th place. He's up to 25th, and the Inter driver right now continues to push on a bit more as he makes his way up onto the banking. I wouldn't be surprised here if he's looking at a very good performance at the end of this one. So he's been able to stick a good number of laps together so far and hasn't really been caught up in any mistakes. Albeit, roaring his way into the bus chicane, he does have the company of Dominic Singondong catching up, albeit Singondong has pitted, Milwaukee has not. That is going to be one of the big thought processes here. If you've yet to pit, do you play the game of holding up the driver behind, or do you simply let them go knowing you're only really costing yourself effective time unless you're potentially trying to hold up a driver in a team and your teammate is going to be battling with them later on. But in these high speeds, understandably, many a driver here right now will be focusing more on their own race rather than their team's race this early on. But speaking of teamwork, we come up to the battle for third and fourth between the Cube Racing team drivers of Olivier Dean and also Sylvain Depeche. They've been working together since the start of the race, really, albeit Depeche has had to work very hard to get back into the toe of his Ferrari teammate. They're back here now in the 280 and 281 respectively, and Martin Stratman, he brings Tim Perry along for the ride with him with only 17.5 minutes left. But could this all now start to turn? Because Bortolotti comes into the pit lane from the lead of the race for Gazek's racing team. Callum Lux stays out there. Now, Lux did have the opportunity to do a little bit of fuel saving on the opening 5 to 6 laps before he lost the slipstream of the leader. So the Jens Brothers competition driver, by going longer, is hoping that potentially he can offset Bortolotti's gap, albeit offsetting a gap of approximately 7 seconds is not going to be easy, even with a lot of fuel saving. So we'll have to see exactly how this is going to play out, but I wonder whether Bortolotti has seen a window, or his team has seen a window that he will be able to fit into, and he's going to come back out in clear air. Well, here he comes into the pit lane exit. We look to the blimp view, and well, this is going to get a little bit hairy. I think he's going to get caught up in a pack here. Yes, he is. This is going to put a very big spin on the battle for the win, because suddenly Bortolotti comes out behind what is none other than Mark Hutchison and Joris Peters Veem, and he has got Benjamin Massey right behind him. As we jump on board with Benjamin Massey on inside the car right now, the Inox Motorsport driver, he'll be looking at this and realising that's the leader who's just come out in front of him. And I think for Massey, he'll just want to try and copy the leader's movements around the circuit and make sure that he stays with the elite driver. But if Veem and Hutchison continue to fight each other and don't realise what's going on behind them, not that they have to give way, to be fair, there's no blue flags or anything like that, they're not a lap down, but obviously you want to be cognizant of who you're racing with and who you're not racing with. Well, right now, Bortolotti, if he ends up caught up in this for too long, that gap he carved out of 7 seconds may suddenly be slashed considerably. We'll have to see what's to come. Albeit if Bortolotti's pitted, then I think that's a signal flare going up that we're expecting pit stops on the majority of our leaders sooner rather than later here as we continue to head towards the finish line. Here comes Callum Lux into the pit lane. Also behind him, that is the lap down machine there making its way in of none other than Riley Green. We've also got Olivia Dean coming in and Sylvain Depeche. Could this be the big excursion? Did Bortolotti just decide to come on in order to potentially get out the fly? Well, not quite, because Martin Statzman is still going out there. So there are still some drivers who think they can go deeper. Pete Edwards as well, working with Miguel Leon, has stayed out. There are drivers who've been able to save the fuel. This is definitely getting more and more interesting by the minute. Hutchison and Veem are still staying out as well. Bortolotti's behind these two right now, and well, they're fighting again as Hutchison goes defensive. Veem on the outside. This is getting even more intriguing here by the minute, and well, you can see there Hutchison right now flashing his headlights to say to the car in front of them, that's none other than Chris Keenan. Can you step aside? Keenan does. Veem goes up the inside immediately. Bortolotto follows through as well. They are all right now using the lead car as a bit of a proverbial battering ram here, but this race is definitely now starting to turn a bit of a strategic corner, and well, in that chapter of the book, I wonder what the ending is going to be here, as we still got more pit stops to come, or have we? Surely we've got to here. If we're seeing the leaders now pit with 14 minutes to go, no way anyone can do a no-stop strategy here unless they're incredibly off pace by default. But then again, I've seen miracles happen in motorsport, I can tell you that. I think we all have, ladies and gentlemen. And well, as we do see here, Flavien Teffry, the French privateer, make his way onwards. He did take a pit stop right at the start of the race. He started from the pit lane, in fact, so therefore he is due a pit stop at some point. But as we do have a disqualification from the race for Pinter Levente, not quite sure how that's come about, but he has been forced towed to the pit. I wonder if that's for instant points for Levente. And meanwhile, it does seem as though For now, Martin Stadtmann is your leader on the road at least, but not on strategy. Bortolotti is meant to be your leader on strategy with Callum Lux coming out behind him. Where is Callum Lux in all of this? Here he is. He is 4.5 seconds back. The damage is being done to Bortolotti's lead. That lead has been brought down by 3 seconds. 1 second of which was in the pit lane. The other 2 was because of the traffic he's found. But now we have had what is Hutchison and Veem come into the pit lane. Miguel Leon is still out there, still going on a 28th lap of fuel right now. He has done an incredible job of being able to do this, and we'll have to wait and see what the IMSA eSports driver can do from this point onwards. But right now, as he flashes lights in earnest there, that is flashes lights to Jack Wells in front of him to say to him, can you please make sure you step aside when I come behind you. But right now, Miguel Leon is going the longest of everybody on that opening tank of fuel, as is Angel Adornes here for Moon Racing Team. So the Spaniards have done an incredible job of fuel saving, even though they're in 2 different teams. They're not part of IMSA eSports, the pair of them. They're 2 separate teams. But right now, it definitely seems as though the Spaniards have found some magic in their cars that nobody else has been able to when it comes to the fuel tank. And what I be, as we do see Adornes right behind Sylvain Depeche. We'll know it has to come into the pit sooner rather than later, as we have a black flag. That, I believe, is a drive-through penalty for Mark Hutchison. That's an instant point. He has served that in the pit lane. And meanwhile, Angel Adornes, meanwhile, is just absolutely looking to try and carry out that speed as much as he can all the way to his next pit stop. And I can imagine that fuel tank right now is getting quite empty as he gets towards the very finish. But as we do see there an update from one of our administrators and spectators, none other than DXT Rob, who says that Pinto has been disqualified for reversing down the pit lane. So one would imagine that perhaps he's missed his pit box and probably didn't have enough fuel to get to another lap, and therefore has had to try and reverse, but in reversing too far, he has been disqualified by the automated iRacing shielding system. That's not the way you want your race to go. As here's your new leader then, and well, it's an old leader if you will, because Miguel Leon's come into the pits to take his mandated pit stop, and Mirko Bortolotti now has made his way back to the lead, which is where I think he'll feel he belongs, all the way to the very end. Here's Callum Lux, meanwhile, a bit further back, and the Jens Brothers competition driver right now 4.6 seconds behind. I think this might be how it finishes, and it's the fight for third here, but it's the fight for third between 2 teammates of Olivier Dean and Sylvain Depeche, and you can understand if right now they'll continue working together all the way to the very end, because there are 2 rules in motorsport, the 2 core rules. The first one is beat your teammate. Rule number 2 is don't take your teammate out of the race, and if I know Cube Racing Team very well, they are drivers who race each other with the utmost respect when it comes to battling in amongst team drivers, and they always do want to push each other to a limit, but they will work together all the way out to the very last lap and sometimes down to the very last couple of corners. Now we say hello there to Glass Tech Racing. Says it's been a cracking race so far. Glad to hear you've been enjoying it, Glass Tech Racing. And how many attendees for the opener? We had 58 attendees on the grid, and we currently still have running in this race. As we double check, we have a grand total currently of 48 runners, with 1 car in the pit lane in the form of Riley Green. So we might have 49 runners technically. We have had a few retirements. We did have a big incident in the opening lap, which saw the retirement of 3 drivers, including Soren Kroll and subsequently Callum Jenkins and Julian Eichenlaub a few laps later. And we have along the way lost Virgilio Garcia, Anthony Hilton, Samuel Najia, also Noah Blackwell, Craig Tillison, Liam Kelso we've also lost, and Riley Green. And we've recently lost Pinto Levente. In fact, we're down to 47 runners, as Levente has been disqualified as observed by our stewarding system. But as all the drivers continue to push on here, we look to Chris Keenan, who is chasing after Jack Barker. 10 minutes still left on the clock, and these 2 fighting over 39th at this point. Keenan at this point, I think, wondering to himself, okay, well, I've caught up to him, now how do I find a way through? Corvette versus Ford, 2 American manufacturers, 1 from General Motors, and meanwhile the other directly from Ford themselves. And the racing driver here just trying to make sure he doesn't make any more mistakes. He's been involved in a couple so far today, one of which wasn't caught on camera, but I've been informed of, and the 199 driver right now will just keeping his head down, enjoying his race. And well, for Jack, the reason why he chose the Ford GT was he absolutely loves the look of the car and also the feel of the car when he did test it a best part of a year and a half ago. And well, right now the Ford GT has been relatively kind to him, but also he is a little bit rusty. He hasn't done too much sim racing in recent months, but it's good to see him back behind the wheel enjoying the series which he's helping run. Onwards he goes, and Keenan trying to keep as close as he possibly can. But where are the fights on the road, I hear you ask? Well, here's probably the big one. It's the long haul of cars, and it is none other than Pete Edwards, who's broken away from it. He's in 8th place, chasing after Martin Statman, and then Pedro Luis da Silva has moved to the head of this pack from 9th all the way through to 13th, and it's separated by only 2.5 seconds from lead car to rear car. And Luis da Silva right now would like to ideally make sure he doesn't fall any closer into this one. Joris Veem, of course, lost out with that mistake earlier on and fell to the back of this group. The same for Henning Schwerbeck, both of them losing out, whereas Marinko Jordanowski has been able to creep forwards, as has Albert Perish, and Pedro Luis da Silva, meanwhile, has just absolutely made this work to his advantage. However, he now has the problem, which is he has Perish staying nice and close to the back of him. And, well, I think at this point, once they know they've got the fuel that they need to get to the end of the race on full throttle, it's only going to see this line of cars break up a little bit, and we'll start to see more slipstream assisted passing get underway. But that's always one of the big question marks as well. Has everybody come out the pits with enough fuel to go full throttle to the end of the race, or have drivers intentionally under-fueled on the basis they will fuel save to get themselves to the end of the race? But then, can they do enough fuel saving to be able to go aggressive? Well, Schwerbeck thinks he can. Oh my good lord, that is a split of the sea there. And, well, that is none other than Marinko Jordanowski being caught out. And Joris Veem almost clipping the rear of him, but in dancing around him. And Jordanowski, in the end, just staying right in the middle of the road. And understandably, I think the 214 driver there is probably looking around and thinking, what on earth was all of that? Well, I can tell you one thing, if anybody knows, let me know on a postcard, because for Jordanowski, I think he's just had his entire race flash before his eyes, with Joris Veem being very adventurous there, and Schwerbeck also looking to put the pressure on. So right now, Jordanowski being very strong and stable in his BMW in the 214, but understandably, the Gazix Racing Team driver will be thinking to himself, okay, what's next? Because right now, Veem, one thing's for certain with Joris Peters Veem, he is not afraid to rub his hands together and try to put some magic together when it comes to moves. Onto the banking they go, and as they roar the way around, well, right now we can see the 214 driver here, and he's definitely just keeping it all together as Pedro Luis da Silva in the GPX SimSport machine, the 255. He's keeping Perish with him, but they'll be hoping that it's just these two now working together in the fight for 9th place, and they can leave the other three behind them well and truly behind. Looking to Rene Rossler, as we do see Dominic Singendorf making his way around the outside. He'll fall down to 16th place with the Gaz X Junior team driver, as he makes his way now up to speed. 6 minutes and a final lap left on the clock here, and Daytona right now falling into the clutches of what is very limited battles. Exciting battles at that. Statman has to go slightly defensive versus Pete Edwards. I think he's going to go out very wide there, and he'll get away with it that time. There is a very particular line you can take to use the runoff area at turn number 1, albeit go out too wide there, and you'll pick up a slowdown penalty and an instant point for your indiscretion. So the 269 driver here right now, testing the limits and testing them successfully that time, but he won't get too greedy with that runoff area, because the more he leans out there, there are a lot of marbles that are gradually gathering out there as well, and it can make things just that little bit harder. But as Chad Henson comes into the pit lane, he was at the time running in none other than 44th place. His car comes to a stop, and I think that's going to be for a quick smash and dash of fuel, potentially. Yep, it is, and they underfueled the car, but the Los Dos Bravado driver makes his way back up to speed, which is good to see. We take a look back at what's happened to Cedric Boisier. So this was the Cube Racing Team driver in the Ford GTE. What exactly happened into turn 1? Went straight, carried a lot of speed, and the rear of the car said, no you don't, you're coming around with me instead. And Boisier trying to tame the car and then get it off the racing line. He did that successfully, just in time there. That could have been a very hairy moment if not. And well, Marco Holmes catching up as Angel Ordonez meanwhile passing him. So back we come then. 5 minutes now left on the clock, and we look to Rene Rossler versus Singendonk as the two pro drivers go side by side here into the bus stop chicane. And well, it's going to be Singendonk on the inside. They're going nice and defensive. Rene Rossler tucking into the draft. And well, we jump on board the BMW M8 driver now as he builds up the speed. As that V8 now starts to sing, twin turbo powered V8 there for litres as he roars his way onwards. Right now, the 107 driver here getting closer and closer, picking up the speed at a tremendous rate of knots, but backs off there, interestingly. I wonder whether he thinks he hasn't got enough fuel yet to try and go for the move. Alternatively, he's got so much of an overspeed, he can choose exactly when he wants to go for it. A bit of an odd moment there. It's almost if he wanted to go for the move, you would think he would have lifted off a bit earlier in order to make the gain on the car in front more gradual. But the fact that he's had to completely back off there, I think it's a fuel saving issue here for Ocelot. I don't think he's got enough fuel right now to try and take the lead of this battle, and I think instead he's fuel saving for the final lap, so that way he can go all in. If Singledonk picks up on this, however, what he can do in turn now is he can start to play the game, if he's got enough fuel, of trying to pull away a little bit, particularly using the traffic in front to help him out. But despite the fact he's flashed his lights, he's suddenly going to realise that's not a lap down car he's coming up behind. That's Benjamin Massey, who is 14th place. So right now, what was a fight for 15th has evolved into a fight for 14th, and it's going to be Benjamin Massey who's going to be looking in his rear view windows and thinking to himself, great, you guys again, because he will be used to battling with them from the opening 20 minutes of the race in the iNOX Motorsport Drive. I think thought he got the job done to break away. Not quite so, but that's definitely now something that's going to be on his mind, and Singledonk at this point would love to siphon the slipstream of that Ferrari, as he gives a bit of a flash there to the Ferrari in front of him once again. And I think that might be all about trying to send... Oh, going straight on there. My goodness, that's a technical issue for Singledonk's car, and I believe that is just a sudden retirement for the Dutchman. And we went straight on. We're not going to see him again, I don't think. And there's a story there, and that is an unexpected retirement. So Benjamin Massey will be safe now, and Rene Russell will be hoping that with the fact he's got so much speed in this BMW, that he can creep up behind the Ferrari from 1.3 seconds back with only this lap plus another 2 to go. We'll have to see, but that was definitely a surprise there for Singledonk. There'll be a story about that. We'll find out about that after the racing today, hopefully. Cedric Boissier, meanwhile, on the back of Markel Holmes as these two swap places after Boissier's mistake into turn 1 on the previous lap. But now, as they cross lines, go on to lap number 34. Too wide they enter the opening corner. How will it end? It's going to end with Holmes defending nice and tight. Gets the car to the wall and manages to pin it there, or does he? Runs out a little bit wide, but that'll be to pick up the speed now. Boissier there looking for the potential move, trying to creep around the outside in towards turn number 4. Holmes defends the inside very nicely there, and now Boissier's going to try and get the power down, but that's not something the Ford GT's known for compared to the Porsche. But Holmes being very respectful there, to be fair, on that inside line. He could have used more of the road, but chose not to. Gave the Ford GTE driver plenty of racing room, and in towards the next hairpin they come, and Holmes holding on for now. But Boissier definitely thinking about an opportunity here, and he's running out of time if he can't get it done, because our leaders right now are coming to the end of lap number 34. Here is Mirko Bortolotti, and with 1 minute 30 left on the clock, he's on to the final lap of this season opening race at Daytona, with a 6.6 second gap to this man of Callum Lux, and Olivier Dean a further 13 seconds behind. It looks though right now the podium places might all be sealed up, but we've still got some battles to come, including the fight for 7th place between Martin Statman and Pete Edwards. And we also, of course, do have the battles further down for 10th place between Pedro Luis da Silva and Albert Parrish. In fact, that's the battle for 9th through to 10th. And also Henning Schwerberg, Doris Petersveen and Rinko Jodorowsky. They're all fighting hard over 12th place by comparison. Edwards here right now, diving to the inside there. Statman gives him all the space. Edwards goes for it. He goes to the switchback hammer to Statman. They're going to be too wide on the exit through 2. Into 3, the sparks fly as well. And here they come then in towards the horseshoe hairpin. And it's Edwards on the inside. He's got to where he wants to be. Can Statman find a way back? The answer is no, not quite, as we jump on board with the Porsche driver for a brief moment here. Cognizant of the fact that our leader's already halfway around the final lap. But Statman has lost the place for now. But in a battle of elite drivers here, he's going to look now to the inside into the corner, goes diving into the corner. Martin Statman, can he get it pulled up in time? No, he can't. He'll go to the grass, and Pete Edwards surely will take that 7th place now all the way to the finish line. Well, as that unfolds, meanwhile, further back, Pedro Luis da Silva keeping Parrish behind, but Schwerberg and Veem have both caught up as well, as Marinko Jodorowsky has fallen backwards off of them, and that battle right now is going to be a run to the finish, most certainly. That's Christian Ablas, and meanwhile closing up to the back of Don Hunter right at the end for 20th place. But, ladies and gentlemen, back to the front of the field. And after taking pole position by only half a tenth of that, for Mirko Bortolotti, it has been a straightforward race for a season opener. And he will see the checker flag and take victory here at Daytona, ahead of Callum Lux, who brings home the runner-up spot for Jens Brothers competition behind the GazX Racing Team winner, and it'll be Olivia Dean, who in the end bringing on home a third and a fourth in sequence for Cube Racing Team, ahead of his teammate Sylvain Depeche, who just misses out on the podium, but well done to Olivia Dean. There's Depeche with him in the Porsche, and then Tim Perry will survive to a 5th place finish in the end, ahead of Miguel Leon, who pushed him close every step of the way, but it wasn't to be. Pete Edwards will bring on home 7th in that last-minute battle with Martin Statman, and then we will have in 9th place Pedro Elise de Silva, who holds off Parrish to the line. Albert Parrish completes your top 10 ahead of Henning Schwerberg and Joris Thiem. Marinka Jonovsky takes 13th place ahead of Benjamin Massey, with Renee Russler completing the top 15. Angel Adornes, meanwhile, he'll make his way on around here for 16th place very shortly. The Spaniard for Moon Racing Team, a solid effort from him ahead of Cedric Boissier. And then we will have Marco Holmes, Adrian Vlock, and I believe Don Hunter completing their races to round off the top 20. Here is the HTS racing machine of Vlock as he crosses the line. And then Hunter is only a small bit behind, or is he? No, that's going to be Christian Ablasser. It's going to be a toad. It's going to be a drag race to the finish line, and in the end, by literally a nose, Christian Ablasser in the Corvette takes 20th place ahead of Don Hunter, with Mark Hutchison taking home 22nd ahead of John Ludbrook and Jan Lintz, and then it'll be Ryan Walker 25th ahead of Matt Broom, with Flavien Theffery in 27th place, the Frenchman in the French flag machine, ahead of Andrew Fellows and James Bostock. Bostock just being pipped to the post by Andrew Fellows there. Jack Jaeger rounds off your top 30. The privateer ahead of Matthias Pettinger. And then we will see Bruno Key in 32nd place ahead of Marcus Singendonk. And I believe with that, ladies and gentlemen, that will be all your finishers on the lead lap. But goodness me, what a race to open up our account here in the SimRacing International GTE Championship Season 1. And well, Mirko Bortolotti has already made his way back to the pit lane, but Callum Lux is almost there as well, and he'll be very happy that 2nd place 9. That Bortolotti was not quite touchable today, but he made himself untouchable as well, did Lux, versus the rest of the field. And Olivia Dean and Sylvain Depeche, they'll be very pleased for Cube Racing Team, as the team will take a huge 4 points and will be your provisional championship leaders after the opening round. But as all drivers cool things on down and take it nice and easy into the pit lane, what a great way to open up 2026, no doubt about it. And if we can get confirmation as to who your class winners were, ladies and gentlemen, we will. We do apologise for that once again. We've only been able to show you overall positions today due to a technical fault that we will get resolved ahead of round number 2. But what an overall race it's been between so many drivers across our classes of Elite, Pro and Inter. And as they all cool on down, let's take a look at those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So as we can see, after an absolutely brilliant opening 60 minutes of racing, goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, my brain needs to get in first gear, I can tell you that, here at Daytona for round number 1 of the GTE Championship. Mirko Bortolotti was your overall winner in the end for GazX Racing Team by 6.6 seconds over Callum Lux, with the Jens Brothers competition driver keeping him honest in the opening 5 to 6 laps, but in the end the Italian just proved himself to be a little bit too quick for the rest of the field. Still for Lux, he was able to make himself 14 seconds clear of Olivia Dean, with the Cube Racing Team driver taking home 3rd place ahead of teammate Sylvain Depeche, who he worked closely with over the entire distance. Tim Perry took 5th place there for Alstud 3M Esports, and a good round off the top 5 there for the BMW driver. In fact, 4 manufacturers inside the top 5 spots. It's lovely to see. And then we had the Corvette, so Miguel Leon for Enosis Esports, and HTS Racing's Pete Edwards 6th and 7th. The Australian driver fought hard in the end to make sure he took 7th ahead of Martin Statman, with the GazX Racing Team driver trying to go for the counter-attack on the final lap, but a little bit too hot on the brakes, even for the Porsche. And then Pedro Luis de Silva fended off the attempts of Albert Parrish to hold him to 9th place, with the Spaniard in the end round off your top 10. Henning Schwerberg took 11th, best the rest of Beast Racing ahead of Joris Thiem, and the privateer then being followed up by Marinko Jonovsky, with the GazX Racing Team driver in 13th place ahead of Benjamin Massey, and Renee Rossler in the end in 15th. And well, for the GazX Junior Team driver, a very solid start to his season, no doubt about it, and I think he'll be very pleased to see how that has all played out. But outside the top 15, we had Angel Adornes for Moon Racing Team ahead of Cedric Boissier, with the Cube Racing Team driver then being followed up by Marco Holmes and Adrian Vlock and Christian Ablasser completing your top 20. Outside the top 20, in 21st place, it was Don Hunter, ahead of Mark Hutchison, with John Lebrook and Jan Lintz close together in the end. Ryan Walker was the third, 2 seconds behind, and Matt Broom, Flavien Theffery, Andrew Fellows, James Bostock and Jack Jaeger round off your top 30. Outside that top 30, we saw Matthias Pentinger ahead of Bruno Key, with Marcus Singendong in the 33rd place, was the best he could recover to for Mello Motorsports, and he was your last lead lap finisher. It was a lap down for Jack Wells in 34th, as it was for Justin Noel, with the lap down theme continuing all the way through from Justin Noel to Brandon White, Brian Beardsworth, Chris Keenan, Robin Noel Brown, Jack Barker who completes your top 40, Chris Susky, Chris Round, Dominic Singendonk, Helke Zilstra and Chad Henson. 2 laps down, Eddie Theobald, and your last classified finisher was Logan Timberlake in 47th place for Sim Party Race, and it all looked so good in the early stages, but it all went wrong as time went on. And then we did have Pinta Levente in 48th for that disqualification. He was the first of the non-finishers, and it was also non-finishes for Riley Green, Samuel Nuccia, and also there Liam Kelso, Craig Tillison, Noah Blackwell, Antti Hilton, Virgilio Garcia, and then your 3 drives we lost in the early stages after the open lap incident. They include Julian Eichenlaub, Callum Jenkins, and Soren Kroll. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the overall race results. And again, we can't quite bring you the class finishing position today due to a technical limitation. However, with our racing coming to a close, that's all we're going to hear in terms of the roar of engines live from circuit side at Daytona. But don't fret, because this broadcast is not over yet, and we will be back in approximately 5 minutes' time for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And let's hear what they've got to say about the racing here at Daytona today. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time to kick off our first interviews for this season. And we're going to start off by looking towards the interclass. And joining me now in the interview room is none other than Andrew Fellows. Good evening to you, Andrew. And well, pleasure to have you here. But how was it for you out there today in the first ever GT race here at SimRacing International?
I loved it. It was really good. So obviously I drove a bit of the GTs with the AGTC last season. So quite enjoyed the GT. So I thought, why not come back and see how I do with just GTs, and it was quite good actually. Daytona is a nice track.
Well, felt good out there and enjoyed the Daytona circuit. Let's talk a little bit about your car choice this season. You've gone with the Corvette. Is it perhaps because it's a old reliable, or did you fancy something different?
Probably because it's the car I know the most. I felt comfortable in it, so I was just like, well, why buy another car? Because they're all very similar, and it seems to be quite a stable car. So, to be fair, tweaking the setup. Pedro on the team did a wicked job with the setup. It was just planted all the way through.
Well, a planted car worked nice for yourself, and going into tonight in our interclass, qualifying in the end, 47th overall. We didn't quite catch your class position, unfortunately, due to a limitation on our end. Well, not 47th overall, 32nd overall, I should say. Were you happy with your qualifying lap?
Yeah, it was a decent 42 dead, probably the fastest I've ever driven. And I had, and I qualified P2 in class, which I was surprised. But yeah, a lot of good effort from the team. Obviously, being quite a drafty track, obviously teamwork helped. So it really helped me with that lap. And then, yeah, it was a good starting position for lap 1.
A good starting position for lap 1, and as we look back at some of the replay footage here, a very challenging lap number 1, multiple incidents around you on the open lap. I mean, from your perspective, how did you manage to survive it all?
I don't know. I mean, the first couple of corners I was fine. I think I dropped to P4 at one point, but then through incidents, I got into P1 coming through the first horseshoe. And then the second horseshoe, there was obviously that big incident, and I had to basically stop, so I was back down to like P4, I think. And then going onto the straight towards the bus stop, there was a collision in front with Robin and someone else, ended up in the wall, and they actually tagged me, but fortunately I didn't spin. Otherwise it would have been game over, but yeah, just managed to keep it out of the wall.
Well done to you for keeping it out of the wall, because I can imagine after all the drama you had on the open lap, that little bit of contact was the last thing you needed. And then being able to sit down and get into the race from that point onwards, you looked a bit lonely out on circuit at first. I mean, did you have much an opportunity to do any fuel saving out there? Because at Daytona, it's normally one of two stories. You're either by yourself and you can't, or you manage to catch a pack and get to fuel save and work out some strategy.
Yeah, so for the majority of the first stint, I was behind. I think I was P3 behind second. I think Pinter, I think his name was. And we were sort of just there with a couple of elites and pros, I think, in sort of a big group. And then towards the end of the stint, I got through into second, and it was a surprise when John, who won the race, well done John, pitted and was like, oh, I've got no fuel. We've got the same car, but I've got another 4 laps in the tank. It was quite a surprise.
Well, a bit of a surprise for yourself, but a welcome surprise in some respects. And then going into what was the later stages of the race, how was tyre life for you? Because we saw a few drivers having a bit of a difficult time on tyres towards the end.
They weren't too bad. I definitely got slower towards the end. I found that in the officials as well. I was getting slower towards the end with the, obviously with the tyre wear. And then I dropped P3 a couple of laps from the end. And then I, on the last lap, caught the curb on the bus stop and spun. Unfortunately, the person behind me was my teammate, James, Mr. Bostock. And he said I'd driven well, so he didn't push it, and he actually let me finish on P3, which was very, very nice of him.
Oh, that's very gentlemanly of him, and it means you've brought home a solid result for your first race of the season. And with that third place, my next question is, Daytona's done. Next up, of course, we do make our way all the way to none other than what is the Virginia International Raceway. Can we expect another podium from you there?
I'll certainly try. VIR, I'm hit and miss. I did okay in some races there, so I mean, my first ever win on iRacing, I think, was there, if I remember right, back in like Mazda days. But I'll have to wait and see. I'll get some practice done, and hopefully, if I can get in the top 10, top 5, just try and keep some decent points for the team, it'd be good.
Well, fair play. It's a good aspiration to have, and we look forward to seeing you chase that in what is a week's time. But just as we let you go, Andrew, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on air tonight?
Yeah, just a big thanks, obviously, all the organisers, yourself for commentary, and everyone at GPX SimSport for allowing me to race with them. Obviously, John, my teammate, and then obviously you've got James and the likes within the team, and yeah, obviously Pedro for the awesome setup.
Oh, fantastic. Well, with that, Andrew, we'll leave you to it. Congratulations once again on securing a maiden podium for the season opener. A brilliant effort there, and a team effort as well, no doubt about it. Hopefully it'll be a bit more straightforward at VIR compared to the ups and downs of Daytona, but still, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Until next time, however, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thanks, Paul, and you.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Andrew Fellows, who, as we're now being fed information as to exactly where he's brought things on home, well, I can tell you one thing, what a day it's been for him today, in the fact that in terms of his qualifying performance, well, starting all the way back in 32nd place, well, he wasn't too far off of the pole position in the end that was taken by Flavien Teferi. He was the second of our Inter drivers, but started the race, made his way into lead, only to then be caught up in all the incidents around him, but thankfully not wounded as a result of it. And then gradually had to graft his way back up the order after coming to a stop. Well, definitely a bit of a challenging start to the season for the Inter driver, but when all was said and done, rewarded with a third place finish, I don't think he's going to be too upset about that. And if anything, I think that's only going to motivate him to push even harder when we make our way to VIR in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, more interviews are coming, but who's up next? You have to wait and find out. Well, we stay with the theme of the interclass, ladies and gentlemen, and now joining me in the interview room is none other than WP300 Esports' Bruno Key. Good evening to you, Bruno, and well, what a way to start the season for yourself. A solid finish in 5th in the ending class.
Yeah, it's my first time to do this, and so for my side, it's like the good morning, good evening for us. It's 6 a.m. for me, so it's quite hard for I need to fight to the everything I told myself I don't to sleep and I just to go, and so I'm happy for this. It's a clean race, so still need to find some pace to do the to do the fight with others, but yeah, it's a good start for the season.
Oh, indeed, a good start, especially given the time at which it is local to you and you racing. Qualifying then, 47th on the grid. What happened in qualifying? Because it seems as though you couldn't quite achieve the pace you wanted in the qualifying session.
Yeah, actually, for the qualifying, I do my personal best lap time, but yeah, the others, I think, traffic is the most important, and for the race, for the qualifying time, I think, in the banking, I still need to the some speed, but 45 is for my side is the good lap time.
Well, a solid lap time from yourself, and going into the race, it was all chaos in the midfield, albeit you were quite far behind it at the start. What was it like on the opening lap?
Yeah, for my side, I saw the front have a lot of crash and the contact, so I think I need to without this any trouble and to clean the race. So I try to find the way, and yeah, luckily I don't have any contact with others.
Well, thankfully you avoided the contact, and as the race went on, we saw you gather places gradually. How was the BMW at Daytona?
Yeah, I like the BMW for the banking for the street, but in the inside, um for the inside for the turn one, I feel like the car need to the find the way because in turn one I feel like I have almost to spawn in turn one and in turn six I think. But luckily I control the car and the car's feeling good on street, but to the defend I need to find the way. But the car is okay. I hope I can find more speed for the next one.
Oh, fair play. Speaking of the next one, we head to VIR in a week's time. Is it a circuit you're confident at?
Yeah, I think I have more confidence for the American track, but yeah, we will see that. Where it's my favorite track also, so we will see.
Oh, indeed, we will. And just as we get ready to let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast tonight?
Okay, thank you, thank you. See you next round. Yeah,
Oh, fair play. We'll see you next round, Bruno. But until then, have a great rest of your day and thank you once again.
yeah. Thank you, Paul.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Bruno Key from WP300 Esports. And goodness me, what a time for him to be awake. But what a way to deliver in his season opener. Qualified 47th, but set a personal best in his hunt to 9th place in what was, the interclass. And in the end, over the race distance, stayed out of trouble in a BMW that he's very confident with, loves it on the straights and on the banking, but having difficulty in the corners. But a 5th place in the interclass and 32nd overall, it's not a bad way to start off his season. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's only going to build it from there. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll leave him there. And we've got another couple of interviews on the way. Speaking of which, interview number 3, it's not far away. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to our third interviewee, and joining me now in the interview room is none other than Benjamin Massey. Good evening to you, Ben. Glad to have you with us. And firstly, allow me to say congratulations on being our first pro winner of the season. How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy because it's one of my first leagues that I've joined. So it's been nice to have a cleaner sort of driving standard as well. Like more people take it more seriously compared to officials. So it's nice to be able to have some close battles with people, and obviously a good result tonight. So we'll just see where it goes from here.
Oh, 100%. A great result to start off your season's campaign. And in terms of how you delivered it today, I mean, in the early stages, of course, of any season, it's about finding out who your rivals are. But you didn't have it easy here. A 5th place in qualifying, 23rd overall. Were you happy with qualifying?
Yeah, I mean, I was up a lot on the final lap. I was up 4.5 tenths until after the bus stop. Then I had nobody to draft me along for the final few corners, for the third and fourth corner of the oval. So I lost all that time, but I reckon I probably would have been up a few tenths, probably P3, maybe P2, if I had that draft. But I mean, it's still a decent position to be on the grid for the race, I think. And I was next to my teammate for the race, so for like for the start, we could play tactically together and make up some time.
Oh, indeed. And I think we getting a word with Matthias a little bit later on this evening as our final interviewee. And we saw, as we see in the pictures here in the replay right now, the two of you working together. But it wasn't as straightforward as perhaps most teammates would like. We saw you guys constantly fighting with a number of drivers out there, including Dominic Singendonk in the early stages. I mean, how hot was it over the team radio between the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, like, we were both trying to obviously work together to get a good result, but obviously everyone else is fighting for the positions at the start of the race, especially with a mixed grid at the start as well, because it's just based on quality time and it's not separated by class. So you've got the elites and then obviously the inters behind you, and some of them, like with good times, would be like with you. So you've got like varying skills almost, not by loads, but like people might be better at some parts of the track than others. So you're a bit, yeah, like we're just trying to keep it like kind of under, like no stress, just kind of try and keep it, just keep up and not try and fight too much. But there was a little bit of, not fighting in the call, but you know, obviously fighting on track a bit, and trying to pull each other along a little bit where possible. So.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's always that balance, is it not, of fighting versus strategy. But we saw things calm down as the race went on, and you were able to use your strategy and also work with your teammate a little bit more. Off the back of that, however, did that change up your strategy at all? Did you suddenly discover that perhaps you could pit early or later, or was the strategy what you expected it to be?
Well, I'd draft, like, obviously lost some time just from people fighting and me also fighting them. Like, so obviously if we think you're the faster driver, you want to get ahead. But then even once you are ahead, you just slingshot round because of the draft. But yeah, like, I just went super long because I had draft the whole time. I pitted on the final lap possible. And managed to gain, I think, a few seconds on the guy who finished P2 in the end. That managed to give me a little gap. Because I was like 6 seconds behind when I boxed. And I managed to come out like 2 seconds maybe, or 2.5 seconds I think it was, ahead of, I think it was Rene, after the pit strategy. So maybe he had more traffic and I managed to get slipstream and save loads of fuel, really, probably a couple of litres at least the whole race. So save a few seconds in the pit stop. But we ended up not being together, like me and Matthias, because there's an incident, unfortunately. We still got a decent result, P1, P8, so yeah.
Well, indeed, a decent result to start off the season, and unfortunately you weren't with your teammate all the way to the end, but that's the way it sometimes goes. But the flip side is, you've opened up with a win, and I do have to ask, what made you pick the Ferrari? Because many see it as a bit of a princess when it comes to GTEs.
I think it's just because when I used to watch iRacing like 5-6 years ago, before I got it, like I think it was the Ferrari GT3 488. It's just like the sound of the car, just like, I don't know, it just has some like nostalgia to me, and it's the only one I have at the moment as well. So I was just gonna go with the Ferrari, and like it might not be the strongest car, but I don't know, I just like driving it. So I think with the safer setups, because it's quite dangerous, I think on the like esports setups you can get, for me at least. But like, it's quite a fun car and it has a bit of like nostalgic meaning to me a bit. So. And it's just quite, and the Daytona as well is quite good. It's on the pace at least. So, yeah.
Well, that's absolutely fair. And, well, with the nostalgia, I mean, who can blame you for choosing the Ferrari? VIR is next then. What can we expect from yourself and the Inox Motorsport team at VIR?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll be towards the front of the pack again. Like, I think quali won't be as reliant on slipstream. Obviously, you got the big straight down the back at VIR, but it's not quite like Daytona or Le Mans here, where it's just like slipstream gains you loads of time. And I think in quali as well for VIR, then with so many cars on the grid, then it's probably going to be even more hectic than Daytona was today. So I think, yeah, hopefully I put some practice in ready for next week and hopefully get a good result again.
Well, we look forward to seeing whether the practice will pay off and you're able to potentially make it 2 wins out of 2 in the pro class. But just as we get ready to let you go, Ben, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yeah, I mean, my teammates, Matthias and Mikkel as well, who's in our call, supporting us during the race and watching their stream as well. So that was really nice. And obviously, if anybody wants to join our team, based on, we're open to people at the moment. Obviously, you've only seen us race one time, but there's always that option. We're looking to grow. Yeah, so I mean, that's it.
Well, fair play, Ben. Well, with that, we'll leave it there. Congratulations on becoming our first pro winner of the season. Well deserved and a brilliantly executed race. We'll see you at VR in a week's time to see whether you can continue to lead the way. But until then, have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Benjamin Massey. And, well, the Inox Motorsport driver sounding absolutely exhausted, it must be said. And in the end, really putting together a solid race. But even a little bit surprised himself there at being able to leap his way ahead of René Rossler right towards the end and bringing on home the win. That was because I do believe Rossler did get caught up in a bit of traffic as a result of the pit strategy and also had a longer pit stop by comparison with Massey to the tune of about 8 seconds, and that all added up in the end to see a swing in the favour of the Inox Motorsport driver. But also noting there that at VIR it's going to be even more hectic to try and get in a good qualifying lap, but has confidence in the Ferrari, likes the nostalgic feel, the sound of it as well, and also the way it can be set up, and sometimes liking the car, not just in terms of how it drives, but also the natural feel and vibe of it can be just as powerful as having the ability to set it upright to get the most out of it. And that mental strength, I definitely think, for Inox Motorsport and Benjamin Massey could see him through at VIR. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got one more interview to come. Don't go anywhere. We've already said who it's going to be with. We'll be back with them very shortly. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we come back to the Pro Class once again. We're getting a double bill of Inters and a double bill Pro Stay, and we're going to hear from Inox Motorsport's Matthias Pettinger, who joins me in the interview room now. Good evening to you, Matthias. And well, we just heard from your teammate who took victory in the class, but it didn't quite work out that way for you. What went wrong today?
Nah, nothing much. I needed to learn a valuable lesson. GTE brake is in the most possible straight line you could. I was killing my tires in the first laps, did not really recognize it until I spin out. Problem is with me, my temper got over, and so I started to try and use as aggressive and killing it even more and more. And that was got me back to P5. I could close up to the slipstream to my mate. We tried to work out together. And then was the unfortunate accident with the back marker.
Oh, that's so unfortunate, because you were looking so quick. And as we look back at some of the replay footage, I mean, saying how aggressive you're driving the car, we can see you driving that Ferrari more sideways than straight through the chicane, for example. But still, you're showing us you can drive the Ferrari quick. And how about it in qualifying? 21st overall, 4th in class. I mean, yourself and Ben must have been impressed with your qualifying performances.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely impressed by qualifying. Especially, I'm impressed how good we work together. I did not see it coming up that the teaming is that key to that good positions. I did not see it coming. Especially in P4, I was hoping for a solid midfield, but then nearly got in the podium. what I would wanted more.
That's absolutely fair. It didn't quite work out then in terms of getting yourself onto the podium in qualifying, but in this early stage of the race, we definitely saw how close it was, and you were running as part of a 6-car pack in the hunt for the top 10. 4 different manufacturers inside that pack. We're looking at it right now on the replay footage here. BMW, Corvette, Ferraris, including yourselves, and Porsches. I mean, how do you work out who to attack and who to work with in that pack?
Man, it's quite easy if I can close up over the corners as well, then I try to overtake him. But if it's just a straight or the draft, I just want to stick behind him. So now he's faster lap times, and it would be just a loss of time for both.
I see. Appreciate the insights on that one. And, well, you definitely managed to find a balancing act there between the cars that you were surrounded by. Now, I did ask your teammate this only moments ago, but why the Ferrari for yourself?
It was a question for setups. Ferrari is one of 3 cars where I do it quite easy to find setups. Second is as well, Ben has it as well, 2 different drivers, 2 different views to the car, feedback what we both can work with. Because it's rare that we try and buy everybody himself, it's more that we work as a team. So different feedback helping us. And especially to the livery, I cannot say no to another car when I don't have such a livery.
Oh, fair play. A good mix of reasons then. Well, with that in mind and the results today, didn't quite work out in the hunt for a podium, but you've shown the pace, you've shown your potential. So what can we expect from you at VIR?
Hopefully this time a podium. Hopefully maybe a 1-2 finish from Ben and me. That would be the goal. We got the feeling both, I think, that we can hit that goal. So we train for it and give 110% until the next Friday.
Well, that sounds like a plan, and we look forward to seeing what yourself and Ben can do then. But just before I do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to on the broadcast?
Yeah, thank you for the team. Thank you as well for Mike, one of our team who makes as well the beautiful liveries. And we wish that everybody the best, and see us next week.
Well, Matthias, with that, we'll leave it there. Well done your performances today. It may not have been the result you wanted, but you've definitely shown your potential. We'll see you at VIR and hopefully perhaps see you on that podium. But until then, my friend, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thanks. You too. Wish you the best.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from our final interview of tonight, a double bill there from iNox Motorsport, and that was Matthias Pentinger's pro voice there you heard, and indeed a challenging night for him compared to his teammate, able to work with his teammate in qualifying to be able to slipstream together to put themselves inside the top 5 of the pro class and around the back end of the top 25. But when they went racing, it was a completely different story. Find himself right in the thick of pack racing, which we're seeing on screen, and talking about there, Matthias, about the fact cars he thought he could easily pass and break away from, he immediately went for, whereas those he felt were on even pace to him, he opted not to fight as aggressively, but he still had to get his elbows out. Unfortunately, an early mistake cost him quite dear, and in the end, it did mean that he had to force himself into a position of needing to make a bit of a recovery drive, but in overdriving the Ferrari, exposing its limited tyre life and its rather sensitive tyre wear as well. And, well, a late instant with a driver a lap down only served to cost him even more. So that 8th place of 31st overall, not representative of what he wanted to bring to the table, but he'd be hoping for plenty more at VIR. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll conclude our interviews there. And a huge thank you to all 4 of our interviewees. And, well, firstly, we heard from 2 of the drivers in the interclass, Andrew Fellows being one of them, who put himself second on the class's grid, but only managed a 3rd place in the end. I say only, it was a very strong drive to recover to 3rd, given how his race started. We also heard from Bruno Key, who started in 47th place overall and made his way to 32nd, and with it a 5th place finish in the interclass. Well done to him. And then we heard from our pro pair from iNox Motorsport, of Benjamin Massey and Matthias Pettinger, and well done to them both for their performances, and particularly to Benjamin Massey, of course, for taking the first pro class win of the season. And, well, Pettinger will need to catch up there and try to add a podium to the mix in order to balance things out. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well done to all 4 of our interviewees, well done to all the drivers today on the debut of this championship, and a huge thank you to those who interviewed as of this evening. And we do need to say A little bit of a thank you to Pinter Zumbo Levente as well, and the fact he did volunteer to interview. We couldn't quite get him in, but he did clarify the reason he was disqualified from the race was because he made his way into the pit lane. He did miss his pit box due to an incident on pit entry, and he tried to reverse in the pit lane and ended up being disqualified for quote-unquote reckless driving by iRacing, and he wanted to jump on interview in order to explain that. Unfortunately, we didn't get quite the time to be able to bring him in, but we thought we'd pass on his explanation there. So a difficult day for him as well, and we hope for Pinter Levente is able to have a better day in the office next time out at VIR. But with that, it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about what we do at SimRacing International and be on the grid in any one of our series, of which we do have 3 major series and also a practice league to boot, well, for all that and more, all you need to do is join our official Discord. Invite link available on screen there, and if you do join the official Discord, you can get yourself on the grid in any one of the following. Firstly, if you're a bit of a GT3 advocate, you can always join us on the grid on Thursday evenings in our Premier Series, which is entering its 11th season, and it has 2 splits and 120 drivers in total, 60 per split. If you're more of a weekend warrior, meanwhile, you can also join the UK SimRacing Security Sunday GT3 Series that enters its 17th season as of this coming Sunday, and well, that's all going to be broadcasted as well. Not quite live from circuit side, that one, but in a post-round broadcast the day after as if it were live. Or what you'll be tuning in tonight, of course, is the GTE Championship, the first season of which, hopefully of many here at SimRacing International, and that takes place every Friday evening. If you're looking for something that's free to join, meanwhile, well, of course, we do have our Practice League, which runs on Tuesday evenings for GT3s, Wednesday evenings for GTEs, and on Saturday afternoons for GT3s as well. So there's never been a better time to be on the grid at SimRacing International in 2026, and for all that and more, all you need to do is join the official Discord. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series and league sponsors, who do include, of course, Carme Modern Technology, the GP2 Group, and also Motorsport UK's esports division. And a huge thank you to Motorsport UK for continuing to recognise us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community, and long may our relationship continue. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the story continues in a week's time, because Daytona is where we've raised the curtain, but we add another chapter to the book in VIR next round on Friday, the 9th of January 2026. Tune in then if you didn't quite catch all the action tonight. But I'll tell you one thing, if Daytona was all about strategy and slipstream, at VIR it's all going to be about track position and being smart on when to come into the pits versus when to stay out. But who exactly will have the smarts to do the dances for the Virginian countryside? You can tune in then to find out how the story continues across our elite, pro and interclasses. But until then, we have been the SimRacing International GTE Championship. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.